but I can't read, I can't write, I can't spell, and most of the time I don't know my left from my right.
Now here's the thing about me that's a secret that most people don't know. I'm borderline retarded, and I can't read. These books that you're recommending, Goethe, I would pick that up and I would be like, 10 minutes later, I'd be like, what's my favorite song? The ABCs?
I think we're kind of getting off topic. Can you name 10 books?
Keep going back to me. Can you?
I just said, no, don't change.
No.
10 books.
You're changing the subject, actually.
10 books.
You're changing the subject,
okay,
actually.
3 books.
Okay. Well, the Game of Thrones series,
not a book.
Twilight series. It is a book. It is a book.
Dress your age. Carrying a school bag on stage. What are you doing with a school bag on stage? You can't even read.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back, baby. How's it going, Prude?
I can't complain. It's good to be back.
We got first chat of the night. Happy to see it. Ready to tard max, sir. Sir, yes, sir.
That's why we're here. We are the biggest proponents of modern day illiteracy that you will ever find on this side of the internet.
I've been getting smarter. I've been reading more, and I'm tenfold more miserable. Can't stop, won't stop. Early grave incoming. And we got a good one today.
We sure do. And it's so funny considering the title of this book. I can't even tell you where on God's green earth I first saw this book and title that made me want to go buy it before it released.
That's so funny because the book we're talking about is titled Antimemetics. And you see that title and a lot of people get excited. That sounds trippy, especially because it's nonfiction. Like, what could this possibly mean? And I feel like I've been hearing about that book, or I've heard that word off and on forever, but I don't know where the fuck it came from. I don't know. This just kind of manifested through some shared delusion, it seems, which fulfills, ironically or unironically, sort of one of the bases of this book, which is sort of like an idea that prevents itself from being known or fogs itself. So I don't know if we fucking read a book, by the way. I don't know what this was. Some kind
I think we read
fever.
a really long essay is what at least for me, I read a really long essay is what I read.
That's when we were talking beforehand. I'm trying to pull up the book here okay, here we go. It is published by the Dark Forest Collective. Let's have a look here so people know what we're talking about. Antimemetics. You can buy it. Soft cover. I guess it's just soft cover or digital only. Published by the Dark Forest Collective.
Can we pause for a moment? We're not saying paperback anymore. We're just saying soft cover.
I don't like that.
I don't either.
It feels inferior. Yeah. Someone made this decision. And
someone said, you know what if we emasculated the book industry more?
You've heard of books, right? Now imagine a dick that doesn't work. Who came up with that? Someone in New York, I reckon. Very New York type styled thing. We got.
I will say this, Dimes, because you never know who listens to these things. Because we had the publisher of Spinal Catastrophism repost the first episode we ever did covering this book. So Nadia, if you're listening, please treat this stream with some constructive criticism. I enjoyed reading it, despite the things I'm going to say on the show. But whoever came up with soft cover, terrible idea.
Despite everything that's about to happen. Now, Nadia, that name conjures up images of a slender woman who smokes cigarettes. So I think she's going to be fine.
This is a slender woman that does some kind of meditation.
She sounds like a real skinny goth type lady who licks toads. Maybe I'm projecting here. Maybe I'm just describing a girl I'd like to...
just a tad.
Maybe just a tadpole. More like it. I mean, what are we doing? It's called Antimemetics, everybody. Why some ideas resist spreading. So give it a look. To your point you just made, I think the Dark Forest Collective have some answering to do. And you had said that is Substack, or they're affiliated with Substack.
She worked for Substack. I don't know if she still does. I know that she is an independent writer and researcher. This is not her first book, by the way. Her first book is about working in public, which is talking about open source research and projects and things like that. She mentions it in this book as well, the stuff that she's experienced. But so for me, like, one, I should have thought to myself, oh yeah, Substack, by looking at the cover of the book. Like, I should have just judged it a little quicker, because then all of a sudden she's talking about how, like, she used Twitter to, like, get hired by Substack when it first started years ago. And I was like, I should have figured that out by just the, color of the cover, but that's okay. The book
it's
itself,
wild to think that people work at Substack.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a company to
but
me.
they do work at. She did work at Substack. She was just known as Nadia at Substack. So
She used to work at Substack. I don't know how the Dark Forest Collective fit into that, but they are a publisher. I would call them a publisher. Otherwise, what is it really? They produced a book. I think some editor fucked up. I think some editor didn't do their job, because this is just over 100 pages. And there's some good stuff we're going to talk about it, but this was very much an incomplete book, in my opinion.
There are 165 pages, but it is at best probably a 4x6 book. You can read this in one sitting. I have read it twice. I reread it today before we went on the air, and I read it last week and a half when I got it in my mailbox, because I did pre-order this. And just like the name implies, I can't remember when I decided to buy this. So I bought it like 6 months ago, according to my inbox on my personal email.
It's like Memento. You're trying to reverse engineer how the fuck you bought this book.
And it's such a beautiful irony, considering the name of the book and the SCP references in the first like 20 pages. So it's a good time.
You open up the front cover, it's just your own handwriting scrawled, "Don't believe her lies."
I did not write in the book's margins. I did do a lot of dog ears to mark some things I had issues with or wanted to talk about.
Yeah, you got the printed copy. I got the ebook version. So if anyone was perhaps concerned that for once we might be on the same page and able to reference things together, fear not.
We keep the tradition alive.
We're going to be working from two different sources, and nothing's going to fucking match up. But I think because you have a hard copy of the book, or soft copy rather, maybe you've internalized it better, because when you have a digital copy,
cover,
it's easier for me to record
notes.
notes.
Do you want your ASMR?
Let's hear that.
Yeah, terrible.
Now,
terrible.
What does the book think of the talking gun?
Oh, what does the book think of? That's a great question. What do books think of the talking gun? We'll find out later. So we'll be talking a lot tonight, everybody. And unlike being in Manhattan, we're going to have a good time. So this book, so for those, okay, so I'm going to give you my general thought and my 2 to 3 sentence summary real quick. The book covers a lot of things that get stuck in my craw about ideas, about group chats, and about being in a digital social ecosystem where the powers that be algorithmically alter the way in which I try to think. But at the same time, it seems to cover every pop culture, teapot, tech-adjacent thing that Twitter has talked about for the last 6 years, and it irritates the piss out of me, because I'm upset I didn't write this book sooner, and I mean, congratulations to Nadia. It's always a difficult thing getting a book published. But so everything from Ursula K. Le Guin, which I know mainly from the Tukey's Mag Boys, everyone's favorite French guy, René Girard, primarily proponent by individuals like Peter Thiel, gets mentioned in this book a lot. Leo Strauss is mentioned. The SCP Foundation is mentioned. Twitter group chats get mentioned. Curtis Yarvin gets mentioned. So part of me is like, man, this is really interesting. But then I have to realize that Nadia and I live in two entirely different worlds, which is something that even she makes reference to in this book, that we all live in these different disparate realities. And so the book feels like a very long stream of consciousness. And it makes sense because she's had this draft and idea working in her mind for years now. And I will say I still enjoyed reading it. It's a recognition that Nadia and I come from two totally different worlds. And I would recommend reading it. There are ways to get a hold of it if you so wish. But I'm left wanting more, is what I've got to say there.
Yeah, there's a few things I can say just to tee this up. I like the thesis. I responded well to the thesis. We'll get into it in a second. Yes. But this was a strange case where I liked the setup, and this was right at my alley, but I didn't like any of the cited sources. I didn't really care for any of the examples, and I think a lot of it is grounded in an incorrect reading of the source material, even though I detect a great enthusiasm for this type of thing. And what I found interesting is, this is very of the moment. This book, when we talk about Charles Cochrane or even when we covered, violent stuff, like what was that book on violence? Anyway, the examples of, these books.
Oh, on Resistance to Evil by Force.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Have stood the test of time, and maybe they can do well with some extra interpretation. Anyone can read this, anyone can understand it, and it's a snapshot of this moment in time. And it's a snapshot of a specific type of woman. And I don't know anything about this woman, but she reminds me of a lot of the women that I've come across in this space who, despite not having an original thought in their head, are still greatly enthusiastic about this thing of ours, this space. They love heterodox ideas. They love edgy things. They love, if not radical ideas, then the taste of radical ideas, the scent of radical ideas. And so they try and anthropologize everything. They try and do a meta-analysis, not just of the ideas, but the people talking about the ideas. So you have a book like this, which is very interested in what group chats are, which is, kind of interesting. And one of the speeches I saw not long ago was from the filthy degenerates over at the Ramilia Collective, and they're speaking at the Urbit conference. And they're there wearing ski masks, of course, because of how dangerous they are. But they're giving a speech about group chats. And that's where I kind of started getting into this thing where there's people out there who think group chats are very, very important. And the topic...
And I would argue they are.
Yeah, and they were saying that everyone has a group chat. Okay, what do you mean by that? And they said, George Soros has a group chat, or Mark Zuckerberg. You have a group chat, you and your friends, and so do all of the elites, all of the important people. And I said, well, here's the thing: George Soros does not have a group chat. He doesn't. I'm going to tell you right now. But he says, well, no, anything can be a group chat. No, it doesn't need to be a Telegram group or a Discord, but they have their own inner circle. I'm like, okay, well, then that's not a group chat. You're just saying that people have their guys. It can't just be that, because we've known that across time. Everyone has a fucking inner circle. Yeah, fucking duh, of course. But they'll try and take an internet thing and explode it out into a more universalist rule that they just discovered. And they'll give everything a new name. They'll give everything a novel title. But it'll sound interesting at first blush, and will feel good consuming this. And you might read this and say, there's a lot of really great ideas in here. But I would encourage you, as we will do in the next little while, step back from it, especially if you're from this space, and say, does that sound right? Or does that sound excited? And those are two different things. And you need to be cautious about people who are just excited about things. So you get a book like this, which unfortunately, as I said, is incomplete. It is an elevated essay. That's fine. This would work well in a book of other essays, but it's really stretched out. And I don't think it's as robust as it could have been. I think it was rushed to market. I think the Dark Force Collective did this woman a disservice. They should have been doing their fucking job, and their fucking job should have been help her edit and say, you know what, maybe you could use 50 more pages of examples, or take this idea somewhere more interesting, which they didn't do. So while it might sound like I'm criticizing Nadia, I'm probably going to criticize the Dark Force Collective. I don't know what band of faggots you got over there that's churning out this slop, but I think she deserved better.
Well, those are Dime's thoughts right there, everybody. You heard him loud and clear and honest.
I didn't intend to go there that early. We tend to bookend this right in the back end of everything.
We tend to, but that's okay. As I had said, it felt more like a long stream of consciousness. Oh, man. Boy Tendio, you have a group chat now. Welcome to it. It's called Being in Chat live. You're
is a group that's
this
in
is
a
group
chat
that is chatting. You're part of it. You're the third chair. Welcome home. You want to just get started?
Let me just get to. We can do one super chat here just before I forget. Would the idea of someone gluing their balls to their butthole be antimemetic? I mean, this might sound like a silly man question.
Because he's referencing an AI-generated song from like obscure vinyl YouTube channel.
Yeah, but is that antimemetic? Let's ask ourselves.
No. It doesn't resist spreading. It went viral. Although the getting paid to shit on company time, I think, is that channel's most popular AI-generated music video.
He wasn't even expecting an answer. That's actually.
I bet you he wasn't. I bet you he wasn't. But no question is too silly for Dimes and I.
Classic meme. We're the experts on this thing, so I know there's.
Silly.
I anticipate a lot of butthole and balls related questions in and around this topic, so maybe we cut those off at the pass with that. Oh, we got Geo in the chat here, by the way. Geo, I paused Mexican Fish Tank live to watch this. It better be good.
Geo, you can just say you were watching cartel beheadings. It's okay.
I know exactly what he's referencing.
And so do I. I'm just giving him a tough time.
He got that from Kino Casino. And his commitment to the bit.
I want him to just go on the show so it can be over.
Geo's whole life is kayfabe, and the character is Geo. Geo, you don't always need to keep playing the character of Geo. You can walk away.
You're not Andy Kaufman. Calm down.
You can walk away, turn off Mexican Fish Tank, go watch Top Gun Maverick like I just did for the 5th time. It's a great way to tee up the rest of the evening. All right, so
watching Top Gun Maverick was so fun to see that in theaters because I walked away and I was just like, all that for Israel?
That's true. I mean, because watching it like the second time, I didn't catch it the first time. I'm like, oh, this is Iran, isn't it?
This is Iran. This is a nuclear enrichment facility.
Yeah, because they don't mention any country names, but they're trying to move past it very fast. Yeah, but
anyways,
and then they purposely
let's get started with the book. We've wasted 15 minutes.
Hey, it's never time wasted when you're with friends. So I'm going to start this up because in the introduction, she's got a fascinating part where she's explaining her life. It's very autobiographical. I would say this is like 50% autobiographical, in fact.
This is an autoethnographic work.
Autoethnics.
For those who have been in communication studies, you know exactly what I'm referring to.
Now the whole chat's full of, is Ethan Ralph
Hey, the
getting
millennials
beheaded?
are here.
The millennials are here.
That a Harold and Kumar reference? Yeah, we know how old you are, Sean. It's okay.
Sean is also Gen X. I've said he's spiritually millennial. We've had many fights about this. So I'm looking at the page right here, and I'm going to just jump right in. She is explaining about how she came to this topic. She's talking about her life. And I think this is very important in understanding who she is. She says, but upon further reflection, I realized that I remembered those stories about her life because I'd written detailed accounts of these experiences, then revisited those accounts until they transferred into my long-term memory. I couldn't think of any experience I'd had that I just remembered without either a written record, photos, or someone else repeating the story to reinforce the details over time until they become indistinguishable from fact. I have no memory. I have no memory of any movie, television show, or book I've ever watched or read, though I can usually tell you if I like them or not. So I read that and I was ready to really not like this book, but I was fascinated by it because
my first thought when I read that, Dimes, was like I literally wrote down on a sticky note, unreliable narrator.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to be mean here or not trying to bully, of course, but like to openly admit that
you've comment was a little mean, I will be honest.
But really, you've heard people saying that, they don't have an inner monologue. Okay, maybe they got. I think she admits she's got synesthesia, where she can see sound, something like that. But I've never encountered this before. Someone who actually doesn't have any memories. And you made a good point. They're unreliable narrator, but that would be the basis for this entire thing, where she's very confused about reality. She does not possess so she's speaking about other people completely in the abstract. She doesn't know, according to her, what it's like to be grounded in any reality whatsoever. She doesn't have any experiences. She's just stuck trying to figure out who's being honest with her. Maybe her diary isn't honest, right? So every minute of every day, she needs to analyze everything she's being told about whether she's being gaslit. There's no deeper understanding or truth in that mind, and that must be wild. Of course, you have no context of living as anyone other than her, but I just don't think this book is entirely relatable as a result. Like, would it be fair to say she's disabled?
No, I mean, she's clearly led a successful life and does well for herself. I don't think so. However, I mean,
is this disabled woman more successful than us? It seems that way.
It sure does. It sure does, Dimes. It sure does. And we can talk about, I mean, the measures of success, right? Both online and offline and on are going to be interesting later on in the book. But she says later on, I've come to understand my mind as effectively as a sensory blank canvas on which every idea is sketched anew. While there is freedom that comes with this lack of attachment, I do sometimes wonder what I am missing by not remembering the things that others do, whether there are important memories, ideas, connections that I should be forming that otherwise escape my mind if I don't write them down. This realization that having an exceptionally poor episodic memory was not the default human experience was more startling than any other brain phenomena I had learned about before. I made my way well into adulthood assuming that we all worked one way, and when it turned out I was the odd one out. Here's a lesson I've learned over and over again. No matter how confident we are in our version of reality, we don't know what we're missing until someone else points it out. And so this is where we get the introduction. This is a book about antimemetics, ideas that resist being remembered, comprehended, or engaged with despite their significance. Your brain is not so different from mine. We are all in our own ways entangled in individual and collective forgetting. Talking about daylight savings time and how we're all for it, but then we kind of briefly forget about it after DST passes. And all sort of like hand washing compliance being low. We kind of start with basic things, and then she goes into much bigger ideas later on. Although I find this funny because she's like, how in the late 60s to the early 80s, the fear of reactor accidents and nuclear weapons, compounded by bad press from incidents like the 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl disaster, kept nuclear energy out of clean energy discussions. For 34 years, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission did not approve of any licenses to build nuclear reactors. But then something shifted. Film director Oliver Stone produced a documentary, Nuclear Now, to argue for its merits. Bill Gates invested $1 billion into building a new nuclear reactor plant in Wyoming. If nuclear energy was actually a good idea all along, why did it take so long for us to revisit its potential? And how did public sentiment flip so quickly? And I don't think we actually get a good answer to why public sentiment flips.
Yeah. And that's something. There's a couple examples she gave right there. She mentioned daylight savings time. She says this is like something a comedian might point out, saying everyone's against daylight savings times, but why don't we just get rid of it? I mean, that is a good question. You should look into why. So it's one of those, that's a very interesting case because
Congress let it die.
She never gets into the 3 dimensions of a meme, by which I mean the depth of a meme, because a meme isn't just an idea. There's memes that are very surface level and no one gives a shit about, and she kind of gets into it later, but not really, but that very, very deep memes that inspire, like daylight savings time is actually something no one really cares about, not passionately. Everyone kind of says they're annoyed by it, but everyone's annoyed. People are more annoyed by the TSA, but only momentarily.
Which also gets mentioned in this book.
Yeah, but only momentarily, and she cannot think temporally. She doesn't seem to be able to sort through an idea that you only encounter once or twice, even though you understand they hate it, versus an idea that you're exposed to constantly. These aren't measured at all when she's talking about memes or ideas. But the point is that to answer her question, why don't we get rid of daylight savings times? Because no one actually really gives a shit. It's very momentary. It's something we say, we roll our eyes, that's happening, but we don't care. It is not comparable to nuclear energy. And like you had said, she just asked a question. Well, what was it about this idea? Well, it's political for one thing, like you had said, like the Congress, you can answer these questions. It's not, because to hear her model, it's just ideas traveling through the populace. Some live and some die. There is, and you discussed this before we went live, there's really no discussion of power or amplifiers or force projectors that actually, aside from the popularity of an idea. See, here's a question. If something is unpopular, why does it happen anyway? Right? It actually has. It's not that everyone was momentarily tricked into liking it, then not tricked. You know what I mean? There's something outside of the virality of an idea that makes things happen, which I think really strikes at the heart of this entire framework.
The other thing too is that we're kind of when I read the nuclear power part, the first thing that came to my mind was like, so we're not going to talk about the China syndrome from 1979 with Fonda and how that like also was a big public pushback against nuclear power for decades, to a point it's still used as a fanciful term in fiction to describe a nuclear meltdown. But I mean, this is why, again, Nadia and I live in two totally different worlds, because the thing about ideas that's one thing that I will say, there is not a solid definition of what an idea is in this book. And I think that that's a very important thing. We can describe how things spread. We can describe Web 2.0 and how we were always looking at this conversion rate for clicks to conversion to reference to emails to opening up to getting on a list to going viral. What's the formula for breaking out and breaking big on the internet in a specific niche industry? And of course, now we're past those Web 2.0 days in a lot of ways. But what do we mean by idea? And we don't really get one. And I think that Nadia does what a lot of people would do. Well, like an idea, like you know it when you see it. Because we do have concepts and idea. Why are we for these things? Why are we pro? Why do Dimes and I have the politics that we do? You know, those are idea questions, but those are also deeply rooted in identity, the literature that we read, the things that we've come across, looking at our observations of the world, in which Dimes and I probably have a pretty consensus, a priori suppositions for how the world works. Nadia and I maybe not so much. And to me, I think that that's really important, because now we kind of skip over what an idea is, and now we just talk about how things spread. Which, don't get me wrong, this is a very important thing to cover. It's just, why are certain things contained? Why? And we get a little breakdown in this opening introduction section about the SCP Foundation, where you get the anti-meme post, for those that remember, what is it, like SCP-055, right? You know, the anti-meme. And so all these things about, well, we can't really describe it. It's very hard for us to remember these certain concepts and ideas. And this becomes sort of the formulation for her book, and this sort of stream of thought about ideas can resist spreading because we live in different environments in which the ideas that do spread are more potent, or the ideas that we want to have spread are kind of kept hidden because they're taboo. And so we have to speak in a certain coded language, and it gives you a very Straussian reading of sort of the online ecosystem. But also, the other thing that's kind of absent, all of the discussion in this book for me, which is also a big red flag / exclamation point, is there's no discussion of power. Because even though, you know, and she mentions like, well, the New York Times can't always like publish 24/7 every day, every second. No, but the New York Times has a greater amount of power and influence as the official paper of record of the United States of America than I do tweeting into the void. And that's another thing that irks me off, is that I've been describing being online as like screaming into a void of screams, hoping that someone else hears you at 125 decibels. And she also writes that being on the internet is like screaming into the void. I'm like, pissed off.
Yeah, it feels like that unless you're good at it. You don't give yourself enough credit. You're not just screaming into screams. People are screaming into your scream.
That's true. But I'm still mad.
But I pulled up the reference for people who don't know what SCP is.
For those who don't remember, or for the
and this is relevant because she talks about this book. There's a book called
There is no Antimemetics division.
Yeah,
which is written by the same guy who wrote SCP-055.
Which sounds good. I haven't read it, but I used to be into SCP stuff, but like long time ago. And for people who don't know, it's like a decentralized, open source fiction project where you probably played games based on it or seen references to it. But I got to read.
You probably all know things like the hard to kill lizard, SCP-173, the statue that if you break eye contact with it, it kills you. Things like that.
It sounds like a lot of Doctor Who type villains too. I've outed myself as knowing what Doctor Who is, and even knowing it enough that I know specific monsters.
You are still technically under His Majesty, and to some extent, I'm not really surprised.
Thank you. See, this is why we're so good together. He saved me from being gay just there.
I've referenced it on the Digital Archipelago. Like, I referenced the end of Death Canon like 2 months ago. Like, some of this stuff is still interesting, even to my 29-year-old man-child ass. So I guess why not? But I mean, so this concept is then sort of used as a hermeneutical lens to discuss how ideas spread and which ones don't.
And I like the idea. As we've seen here, like, what is an anti-meme? It's an idea with self-censoring properties, or taken into a sci-fi realm, it's an entity that's wearing not only just a cloak of invisibility, but a psychological cloak of invisibility, where you don't notice them. They cancel themselves from your vision, and they, prevent analysis by some, quirk of reality or some sort of glitch. They're people that you forget about them. And so, taken into just the realm of communication, it's an idea that circulates, but it keeps certain people from even seeing it or acknowledging it. Now, I hear that. I say, yes, interesting. I like that. Tell me more about that. But you had made a good point just a minute ago about all the different directions you could take this in. And I was reading another book recently called Reality, and it's From Metaphysics to Metapolitics. And hold on a second here.
Sure.
I think I'm sharing. Sorry, a second.
While you're doing that, keep in mind, this is a book written very much in the tech center, tech adjacent, rationalist adjacent part of Twitter and so on. I did enjoy this. I'm just going to read this little paragraph. At the same time, it just so happened that I've been writing my first book, Working in Public, the Making and Maintenance of Open Source Software. I spent the prior few years researching on how to open source software, free and public code that anyone can use, ranging from hobby developers to big companies and institutions was built. Long story short, open, borderless communities were a recipe for entitlement rather than collaboration. Boy, ain't that the truth, whether it's in tech or in our respective countries in Canada and the United States. Just thought that was a little funny.
It's funny. Just the idea I was going to get to before, apologies for the delay there. There's a lot of directions that this book could have gone in. I was reading this other book called Reality, From Metaphysics to Metapolitics by Wynand de Beer. And you watch him build towards an idea, and he has to start by saying, what is a soul? What was the Christian idea of a soul versus the Hellenistic idea of a soul? And he goes right to the root of something and starts building upon it to work his way up to this idea called metapolitics. And I wish Nadia had done that here, because if you want to talk about memes, what you're really talking about is information. And you said, what is an idea? We don't really establish what an idea is, and how can you discuss what a meme is without knowing what an idea is? And you really need to then talk about information. What is information transfer? What is entropy, which attacks information? And you can get into information theory if you want. This idea, like, when you're trying to communicate with someone, even vocally, what is going on here? What is really going on here? What you're trying to do is take an idea in your mind, fashion a linguistic or communicative shell around it, and transfer it to someone else's mind. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to teleport one idea from your mind into their mind. And you lack that ability because you're not telekinetic. So you have to adopt all these skills to make sure that your idea enters into their mind the way you want it to. And how can you do that? Well, and to give the example of, if you try and yell to someone from a distance, and you're just quiet enough and the thing you're saying isn't too clear, it actually arrives at them as noise. It's static, jumbled static. And so it broke apart. It fell to entropy somewhere along the way. So how could you actually prevent that? Well, you can be louder, you can be more explicit, use fewer but more direct words. Hell, you could even use hand gestures to communicate your idea more. All of these things are in service of transplanting that idea, which is the entity, that's the subject here, into their minds. And the more effectively you can do that, the better. And so certain languages actually lend themselves to that better. That's why English is so popular. But also that's why things like subtleties and metaphors and culturally sequestered ideas work better to transmit ideas within the culture rather than being translated, things like that. So I'm like, if you want to get into this idea of an anti-meme, you have to talk about, you need to spend 50 pages on what the fuck is an idea and what is information and how similar is this thing in your mind called an idea, how similar is it to your own DNA? Is DNA just another way that information encodes itself in a shell to transmit it into the future? You can take this in so many interesting fucking directions. And then you can graph that right onto technology and where this ends up in 30 years. There's no talk of the past. There's no talk of the future. So I see this as a great missed opportunity. And if I was her editor, I would have given her some fucking guidance on that. And we could have had a 300-page book that everyone wants to read. Everyone says, yay, Nadia, yay. You 7-foot tall, thin juggalette smoking cigarettes. You're the new Curtis Yarvin. Smash his face under your 12-inch stiletto heels. I tell you what, this bitch is an anti-meme right now because I'm all
no dimes. I think you're just horny.
I understand how she will resist you understanding how angelic she is in my mind. But that's the genius of antimemetics. If you don't understand this, it kind of means I'm right.
Sure, buddy.
So I'm just looking at the chat right now. Meme so good, the feds want to know about it. This is a good example here.
But I mean, Vitlaus is right though, because I mean, there are memes so good that the feds want to know about it. Like the kind of like, I don't want to call them. Well, I am going to call them idiots. The guys that kind of got entrapped by that federal informant in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, where like there were 2 federal confidential informants a part of that group. Definitely seemed like something was fishy there. But also, like, again, we're looking at this book from 2 totally different epistemologies. Nadia is not a right-wing person at all. Dimes and I very much are. And there are some things in here, like, for instance, there's a part where she describes Greta Thunberg as successful. Interesting use of the term or the phrase, but okay. I'm not sure I would call Greta successful. But that's just something else.
But that's an interesting thing, because from her perspective...
But is Greta successful? Is how dare you a successful meme? Absolutely.
Well, that's the thing, because we would say, was she successful at what we assume her goal to be? And maybe our assumptions are misaligned here, because maybe what she wanted to do was to be a young woman, not even that young, she just looks really young. Anyway, she's in front of the UN and she's causing a fuss. And she caused a fuss and she's in the news. So if that's all it was, then mission accomplished. We would assume that there's a larger goal she has in mind, which is to affect public policy, to which there's no evidence that she did. But to Nadia, and she's dealing just in memes and popularity and trends, it is true she was trendy and we know about her, but in service of what? And did she even stick to that? Now she's just about free Palestine. So I don't even know if she's in that same realm anymore. And does that speak to her effectiveness?
She was successful in getting Israel to pay for something.
Yeah, she got a free plane ride. And only Israel will charter an entire plane for one political dissident and make her fly coach like she did. They could even give her first class on her own plane. We're trying to be good. We're going to be good. We're going to be good guys this episode. All right, so we've thrown a lot of ideas at people so far, but I feel like we just need to...
Let's just get into the book.
Okay, you know what? It's better to tee it up with her own words here. So I'm going to page... I believe it's page 20 here. Or, yeah, here we go. So I apologize for the size of the font, people. It's the nature of the EPUB file that I'm dealing with. I can't really increase the font size without fucking up the page number system. But anyway, good thing I'm here to read it to you. The memetic city is easily recognizable. It is the realm of viral ideas and social contagion, tweets that explode overnight, social media avatars supporting the latest political cause, TikToks and Instagram reels that we scroll through at the end of a long day. Here, ideas spread with lightning speed, amplified by social platforms, and shape our collective behavior and preferences. The opinions we hold, the dates we go on, and who we vote for. But the strength and might of the memetic city is partly dependent upon another less visible but equally powerful world that we don't always notice or see, the anti-memetic city. The antimemetic city resists replication, dwelling in the shadows of our collective consciousness, like Shenzhen, which drives the global electronics market, or Zurich, which drives global finance. The antimemetic city is not invisible for lack of importance, but because it thrives on operating quietly in the background. So you hear that, and I'm like, oh, there's something to that. There's shadow groups, shadow forces, secret societies. Even the likes of Niall Ferguson talks about that. There's even secret societies that are semi-secret. People are aware of them, but they don't know how deep they go. There's different levels to this. And this is a good way of explaining it, because when I encountered the term antimemetic, I saw it in some article, maybe some Substack, and it was being contrasted against a meme. And I think it was a Marxist who was writing this. And they were saying that, the anti-meme is sort of like the antithesis to a meme. So you think, okay, well, I know what a meme is. And I know what a meme is in the context of Richard Dawkins. And Richard Dawkins, in his book, The Selfish Gene, he maybe not coined the term meme. I think he did.
He did.
But he certainly coined the usage of, which is to describe, like I was just explaining earlier with the information, ideas that move like organisms. Now, you can actually look at how an idea travels through society. It mutates, it evolves over time, it lives and it dies and it thrives. So the way it moves, you can map this out. If you have enough data points, you can see how it moves as if it were an organism. So you would think that an anti-meme would be the opposite of that. It's anything that impedes a meme, but it's not. It's just another type of meme that resists being acknowledged or understood. And I don't like that. I actually think it should just be a different term entirely, because it's unnecessarily confusing. And when I had first read that, I said, okay, if a meme, it's a new idea, it's an organism, what would an anti-meme be? It would be something like tradition. What suffocates and kills an idea? It is the paradigm, the status quo, the superstructure, if you want to utilize a Marxist framing of it. That can be seen as anti-meme. Tradition would be an anti-meme. That made sense to me. That's not how she's using it. But I also feel that that's absent in her analysis, that the ecosystem where memes move, and you had just talked about this, like a power structure or force amplifiers of ideas, like the New York Times, and there's different levels of, projection that these different the people who purvey the memes, right? But on top of that, if a meme bumps up against the culture itself, these are also other ideas. They're entrenched ideas. Maybe your meme is about, for example, lowering the age of consent. And then you're bumping up the fact that everyone hates that. That's not caused by the New York Times. That's just, it's something deeper in us that we're repulsed by that idea. But is that also a meme? Is it a meme if it's like a mountain and the meme is something like a fucking paper bag in the wind? So again, I didn't detect that in this book at all. I didn't see any reference to that.
I think you're getting a phone call from the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. You might want to take that there, Dimes. So while that's happening, Nadia writes...
Tell me to shut it down.
Yeah, they're telling you, hey, man, cool it. We got Chase Oliver to do that for us.
Well, so Wolfgang makes a point. Wouldn't thought-terminating cliches be considered anti-memes? It seems to me like a different term for the same exact thing. That's what I thought, too. Like, an anti-meme is something that kills a meme. Maybe it's a thought-terminating cliche, or if we want to think of it deeper, it would be tradition itself. But yeah, same kind of idea.
She goes into it here. So she says, anti-memetics are a shadow city built on thoughts, knowledge, and practices that do not easily spread despite their importance to our lives. It is a place where lost wisdom, suppressed beliefs, and uncomfortable truths circulate freely, only to be forgotten once we return to the bright, sunny memetic city. In the anti-memetic world, ideas move slowly but deliberately. Their integrity is protected from the relentless compressed cycle of memetic replication. Thus far, the history of the digital age has been written by the memologists. Everyone knows what a meme is, that social media made it possible for ideas to go viral much more easily than before, and that this sort of virality fundamentally changed how our politics, media, and culture evolve and spread. But as our online landscape is increasingly saturated with memetics, a second narrative has come into sharper relief. antimemetics are just as old as memetics, but they are only become perceptible as people seek refuge from memetic overload, an overwhelming barrage of ideas replicating, peaking, and dying at the speed of light. Memes, too, predate the internet, but become more visible after social media sped up their rate of transmission. An ant crawling across a floorboard is less noticeable than a fly zipping through the air. Anti-memes, by their very nature, pass through our social filters undetected. They tend to influence us in more subtler ways, but we can learn a lot about ourselves and the networks we operate in by examining not just what we share, but what we withhold and why.
She kind of revealed her hand there.
That's,
though.
to me, the thesis of the whole book, or at least mainly.
When she describes taking refuge in the anti-memes because she's so overwhelmed or overloaded with memes, she is describing her own experience and the experience I've heard from a great many other women who found themselves here, former leftists, former liberals, former this or that. They end up over here in this thing of ours as refugees without ever admitting that any of the ideas were necessarily wrong, maybe one or two, but they don't question anything else. But it's like you're only here because you're just overwhelmed by these other ideas and you're seeking out something you think is cool. So there's no difference to you between this thing and shopping. You're here because you're bored, or you're here because you heard this is where the interesting people are talking about interesting things, but there's nothing deeper than that. So like an anti-meme in that case is just something you personally haven't fucking heard about. That's all it is to her. She's like, you came over here to the right because you heard about, hey, this is where all the cool gay Jews are now. And she came over here and said, oh, they're talking about Mussolini. Interesting. Like everything's interesting. It's like that fucking, who's that dumb cunt from Red Scare? Anna. She had that quote, ideas are my cocaine. Don't you want to just take that phrase and snap it over your knee and just throw it in the fucking fire? But that phrase, it's perfect. It encapsulates everything that animates this type of fucking bitch. Right. I'm sorry. I've dealt with these.
I was trying to be so fucking nice tonight. Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry. Like, I've seen this so many fucking times where you show up and you act like no one's been here. Fucking spare me. And you're going to tell me how it is. You're going to tell me it's like, hey, I just showed up 5 minutes ago. Here's how I think group chats work. Get the fuck out of here. You just got invited to a group chat yesterday.
Aren't you just I don't mean to sound like an asshole here, Dimes, but like I think you're just reinforcing her point that she makes later on in the book.
If we're so good, this is
no, the point is though, and she makes this point later, because what is a book that you and I have talked about before on the show, and you've talked about on Blood Satellite like what, 3 years ago? What is it? Think Like a State, right?
Seeing Like a State, yes.
Yeah, Seeing Like a State. That book gets mentioned later in this text. It blows up about 2 or 3 years ago because a bunch of like tech journos and a bunch of like writers and bloggers in Silicon Valley start writing about it. But if you have gotten a political science degree any time between that book was published and today, you probably had to read it for fucking class. I learned about it when I was in college 10 years ago. Yeah. I had no idea it was going to blow up and to be the thing that it is today in a lot of political circles, and also lead to things like the network state and things like that. But Nadia makes a like she's pointing things out that because ideas spread in environments that are semi-private, i.e. our own little niche ecosystems that don't always blow up to virality, that it can lead to our talking points or these things coming to worlds where they don't fucking exist. Like, would you have expected that, I don't know, maybe the casual, I don't know, JQ posting that you kind of see on the timeline nowadays, would you have ever expected that to break the sort of containment that it did maybe 3 years ago, when this was all kind of like quiet, repressed things that we didn't really talk about? The reason why the show that we are now doing now got started because we talked about a book that stayed on my Odyssey channel for 2 fucking years. Like, you're all right. Are you absolutely right that there are tourists? Yes. Do I think Nadia is necessarily one of them? No. I think she just wrote a book because she wanted to, like she said, she had this thing in her back of her mind. She wanted to write it down. Do I agree with some of your complaints that you're talking about? Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying not to be
People need to stop writing. People need to
people need to stop reading.
I know.
Quit reading.
Hey, you got an idea. Good for you. I got a couple of ideas too. Heaven forbid I write them down. I shouldn't be writing. I got a Substack. Whose idea was that? Who's responsible for
Yours?
this? Fucking Satan, probably. All the bad ideas. We're gonna get into Rene Girard in a minute. That's relevant, actually. Believe it or not, this is gonna be relevant later. Maybe I was too hard on Nadia. Let's rewind. Nadia, love you. Hey, girl. Hey, how's it going? Some things were said. I'm trying to make this episode an anti-meme for Nadia specifically.
I think it worked.
So here's this is all a strategy, by the way. It's not like I just flew off the handle like a sociopath. We schemed this out ahead of time.
This has been gamed.
So
I've been slammed down into the ring. I am now 6 feet under like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan. Fuck, this is going to become Digital Archipelago in a second.
It's
I know you got to save that one up for.
Well, I'm hosting tomorrow, so I mean, there's nothing that I can do here. But however, she writes here about a darker end to the end of history. Some people have declared a more ominous version of Fukuyama's end of history, a sort of dark age where culture is merely recycled rather than created. This cultural stasis, it appears to be producing to be a product of mimetic overgrowth, like a yeast that's buried itself into every warm, dark corner of our minds and allowed its white spores to unfurl. Culture critic Ted Gioia, a proponent of the Dark Age thesis, points out that 27% of music tracks streamed today are new or recent, that 83% of all Hollywood revenues come from popular franchises, as same with most video games, Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto, Super Mario Bros. Are old, and that these trends are accelerating. Soon we will enter an era, Gioia writes, where children will play the versions of the same games that their grandparents once enjoyed. W. David Marks, who bridges mimetic desire, again, we're building off Girard, and the cultural production in his book Status and Culture, argues that the value of cultural goods like music, fashion, and art usually derives not from their intrinsic merits, but the social status they confer. While social media made it easier to discover and access new and ever more niche subcultures, hence the desire to anthropologize, Marx believes it has also reduced our desire to challenge culture in surprising ways, because it is more prestigious by mimetic standards, the desire to imitate, mimetic standards, to use proven formulas for grabbing people's attention than to do something potentially risky and original. I would argue there's a lot of truth to that, in part because there's this mimetic desire to always replicate the protests of the civil rights era. You see this even today, despite the fact that those tactics don't work, and that no one wants to use tactics that do work, like the Weather Underground. Yeah, that's something potentially risky and original. Not that I endorse that behavior.
Yeah, but even that statement is interesting because there's something perhaps anti-memetic about the concept of political violence, especially now. And was it made anti-memetic? Because how can the very concept of violence be either memetic or anti-memetic? Is it something deeper? I would say so. But we have been so propagandized, especially in our space, we are highly allergic to anyone saying something like that. There's some people that kind of get away with it. I know there's a writer named Catgirl Kulak who advocates for this in so many words all the time, but saying the phrase political violence is more effective than just simply, political advocacy has an anti-memetic quality. People won't even look at that. And they don't even want to look at you when you say it. They're terrified of that. They would
because that's a very repressed idea. By saying that, or even talking about it, will get you arrested in certain countries like Britain.
Which is an interesting idea, that an idea as fundamental as violence can become anti-memetic, or is the idea of violence deeper than just memes? And I just keep returning to that. It seems like I'm getting bogged down in semantics, but as you said at the start, we don't really establish what an idea is. And without that, we're just lost in the fucking wilderness on this topic. Like, what is the understanding of love different than a new idea, a new political idea? These are all kind of ideas. Is a concept different than an idea? And is idea different than a meme? There is no, we kind of get into a layer which talks about like a super meme and stuff, but those are just real gradations of this idea of like a meme as an organism. But if you don't...
Well, idea is organism, really, because at this point...
Yeah.
At this point, it's just you could really just call this anti-ideas, why some memes resist spreading, and the title would be kind of interchangeable in this regard, at least for how the book is written.
Yeah, or like, is there anything
at this
deeper
point,
than that?
it really, I mean, it does go. I mean, ideas are deeper than memes, but for the sake of what we're talking about in the book, memes and ideas are fundamentally just interchangeable here.
Yeah, and then there's no difference between that and deeper understandings of ideas or things you really just take on faith even. And it seems like, why would you include that in this book? Well, you need to include that. You need to include the whole thing. You need to describe the world in which these memes travel, because that world will explain to you more about which memes live or die. It isn't just, they don't exist in a vacuum. That would be a more accurate way of saying it. And it's not because of some characteristic of the memes themselves. Like, if an idea doesn't spread, okay, let's go back to an example she gave. Okay. It was, aside from Greta Thunberg, it was something about, let's say, nuclear energy. Is it true that everyone was scared into hating nuclear energy until Oliver Stone came about? That sounds like she just read that somewhere. That sounds like something someone told her, because the narrative of nuclear power, especially in America, is fascinating. It's had ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And even to this day, some people are still skeptical about it, or they've been burned on the topic entirely. People who may even be on the side of nuclear energy don't even want to fucking talk about it because it's been so polluted. Or any idea like that, that it's so big that her understanding is it wasn't popular, and then it was. What caused that? It must have been something about, someone must have allowed people to talk about it. And I don't think that's what happened. I don't think that explanation of the narrative of nuclear power, for example, is really how it happened. You know what I mean? Because it's not like a light switch got flicked, which is what it sounds like in her describing of it. It's very, very reductive. And then if you look at the narrative structure of nuclear power, you understand the forces at work, the institutional forces, which aren't just memes. It's not just memes colliding each other like some fucking petri dish. It's a much more dynamic understanding of what memes are, but you need to factor in all these things that we're talking about. And without that, I don't really know what purpose it serves, other than, hey, group chats are kind of cool. Group chat, you know what I mean? Like, if that's it, then let's let that be it. But I don't think you can extrapolate that in this other stuff and just throw half-remembered news stories at it. It sounds like I'm getting riled up again, but
no, I think you're right, because one, like, nuclear energy and nuclear weapons in the United States has such a long and sordid history between fight over civilian control with the DOE and the military with nukes, or a regulatory commission that doesn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole because we've been so effectively propagandized by Congress, and Congress doesn't want to talk about it because it gets buried in with the climate change narratives that we have. You have, like I mentioned earlier, the China syndrome thing. That was a huge anti-nuclear film that did play a role on the public consciousness. And if you don't think it plays a role in the public consciousness, keep in mind that President Reagan saw the movie War Games and freaked the fuck out with his Joint Chiefs of Staff. Like, you can read about this in his biographies. He flipped the fuck out over that, thinking that, like, what could happen in the movie War Games could literally happen in real life because someone was like, Mr. President, it's so much worse than that. And so, but also there's power that doesn't get mentioned at all, which really irritates me. Because later on, she writes about anti-memes have been there all along, working their hidden magic throughout history, such as taboos. Like, you're not supposed to talk about sex, politics, and religion at the dinner table, or with finances at the workplace. Don't ask, don't tell, whisper networks, and secret societies. And so it's just like, okay, so these things are meant to be secretive, they're repressive, because they're gate-kept. And so we do live in a far more anti-memetic society than we did maybe, just 5 years ago on the internet. Why? Because we've all retreated into the last vestige of a gate-kept community. My HOA is my ability to kick your ass out of the group chat. It's that simple and that straightforward. But what does that also mean? It means I have power, that there's still an ounce of sovereignty, whatever little facsimile of sovereignty that there exists now is only online. And so the anti-memetic property of, say, taboo exists because the culture has fundamentally been in one direction and one direction only for the last, 70 years. Right? Like, what is the post-war consensus? That's a big question that you might want to unpack. Does it have anything to do with events that took place during the 1940s? That's a really good question. And so, but that plays as a taboo that we can't talk about things. Why can't European nations be, I don't know, homogenous and proud and nationalistic? Well, we have this thing that tells us that, some things happened in the 1940s and now we can't talk about it. Or that we have to, engage in this like toxic suicidal empathy. So we have to be replacing ourselves, which no person wants that. But those things become, like we see with these like progressive activists that we see in like Britain, right? They're like, well, I'm still pro-refugee and asylum. And it's just like, so you're okay dying and getting groomed, or your daughter getting groomed? Because apparently we've now got these taboo or these mimetic properties so powerful that we're overriding the most basic consensus of human biology. Whether it's men saying like, fuck this, I'm walking away when it comes to dating, like women are not worth my time, despite the fact that the greatest motivator for all men has been to get laid and to reproduce, or that I'd rather see my country enjoy the rising tide of color because I don't want to be called racist. Like that doesn't, like, these things don't get talked about in the book, and this is why I wanted to review it. Because like,
well, this is what I was saying about the book, that there's a lot of the book that I don't really care for, but after reading it, to Nadia's credit, hey girl, I kept returning to it. Like it's enough of an interesting thesis that you run it over your head, and it's like there's something about the idea of antimemetics, and it, of course, she didn't come up with the idea; she took it from SCP, but there's something prevailing about it. Like you still want to apply it to your real life, and because I do see people try and deploy this and utilize this, I'm reminded of a few examples from our space. I'll give a couple of examples because I think those will help people understand it a bit more. So back in the day, they had this site called 4chan, and this was a place where all the cool freaks hung out. And one of the things that you would do on the random board or on the politics board, you want to keep out normies. Above all else, you want to keep out that's where that term normie originated, was on 4chan. And how do you keep normies out from this cool space of ideas and discourse? You don't want to be ruined by them, because if you get too many normal people to show up, men or women really, it just gets corrupted and it starts to suck and all that. So you want to keep those out. How do you keep them out? Well, you spook them. You spook them with extreme content, and it would be gore or porn or trans porn or whatever it might be. All those taboos, and you would build a shield around this thing of taboos to filter out these people. But the question that I have is, and it's not really a question, it's more of an assertion, it's that if you employ these taboos, they will eventually filter back in and totally pollute the discourse. So in the example of 4chan, if you have too many people posting too much gore and trans porn, it eventually just becomes a place full of weird gore and shocking trans porn, and then you become desensitized to it, and then eventually it's something you're into. And there's a lot of people in these spaces who started issuing that pornography to scare people off, and then after a few years, they're a guy with a 10 gigabyte folder of trans porn. I'll give you another example right now. And this is going to get us in trouble, I'm sure, but I see the Groypers do this a lot. And I'm not going to get too deep in the Groypers, but I've spoken to enough of them, so I know they're doing this on purpose, where they get into what's called cunny posting. And it's basically flirting with pedophilia, right? To try and, they're against normies. What enrages a normie these days? Everyone's desensitized to everything except a pregnant 12-year-old. So they have a lot of memes about pregnant children just to piss you off. And then even the guys in like the BAP sphere, they'll do this all the time. What they want to do is rile up the moralists, as they call them. So they'll issue all these memes or stories or posts or whatever it might be, talking about like violent gay stuff. You know, Bronze Age Pervert did one the other day where he was fantasizing about being like gang raped at a gym. Everyone's like, hey, why are you posting so much weird gay shit? And he's like, you don't understand, this is politics, you know, whatever it might be. And, you know, he's being retarded on purpose. That's what they'll say. But, you know, if you have to say it, it really shows your hand. Anyway, let's take them at their word. What they're trying to do is to keep the normies away, filter them out with this extreme messaging. But at what point do you just become a hub of violent and gay nonsense or pedophilia, at some point does that just seep into everything you're doing? It's not a shield. It can't remain a shield. The taboo itself is not an effective filtration system. It's just a goo that you're painting around yourself, and then it gets all over your hands, and then it gets all over you, and eventually that just pollutes. To me, it pollutes whatever idea you were trying to normalize. Long story short, I don't think you can just wield taboos as if they're like little scalpels and you can sort of just neatly carve sections out of yourself to make yourself, conveniently ugly to them. I think you just end up mutilating yourself. And I've seen it happen. So I don't really think this is a good strategy, is what I'm saying about her ideas. Anyway, what do you think about that?
Well, I think to bounce it off the book as well is that she writes here that our realities become increasingly based off the shape of our networks. And so and I talked about this, I did a Twitter thread maybe a couple of weeks ago on this issue, is that unless you're in on the joke, or if you're in on the group chat, or if you're in on the you're just in on the joke, right? You're not going to understand why things are happening other than like you find it offensive or transgressive or whatever, and it's done so as deliberate bait, right? What we would call rage bait or troll posting, things like that. These things happen, and there are terms that we can say online, thought terminating cliche. I don't know where that term originates from. It may have been cooked up in a group chat somewhere, but because I'm not in said group chat, or I'm not friends with the blogger who coined that term, I have no fucking idea where it came from. For all I know, it got like cooked up somewhere outside like Fort Detrick or whatever, right? You have no idea where it comes from. And so, for us, we might look at that and be like, oh, that's fucking terrifying because that's so disgusting. But at the same time, because we are online and our existence are based on our networks, we have these perceived in-group out-groups, right? And that has shaped our social psychology on in the world. And Nadia writes about that too, that like if you look, she cites a paper from some Korean sociologists about the Occupy Wall Street movement. A sparse network to a more densely, highly clustered one, YouTube, whose structure more closely resembles group chats today. The researchers found that influential voices on Twitter helped disseminate information and bridge across communities, and those on YouTube's had high overlap in shared ideas and meanings. And so you have this exposure question now. And so all that I'm doing now is being part of a network that reinforces my ideas, or at least puts them out there, and it pisses off the people I know that it pisses off, and it reinforces like, I got one on the bad guys or whatever, got one on the people I hate the most. And for me, because I'm friends with everyone who hates people who hates this group, who hates people who hates that group, and because Twitter has become, and a lot of our social media, it's not just Twitter, it's also on Facebook, because I have my church friends are on Facebook, and they talk about the same kind of weird, overly online shit that I do sometimes. And they'll encounter a whole different reality on there because I'm not on Facebook with an older generation talking to people. But the same ideas are being cross-pollinated here. And it's like, well, if you know where they come from, then like, cool. But if you don't, you're totally lost. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? And Nadia is correct to point out that like our reality is shaped by network. And the networks themselves affect the algorithms that which we see things on social media. So the way that we reinforce ourselves is by constantly being in this like discursive feedback loop of talking about said thing, shitting on said thing, and going about it to target it. Because if you don't know, like, that certain groups will post this degenerate transgressive shit to get a rise out of you, or that bait is posted to like get the moralists or to get the traditional Catholics or whatever, then like you're just looking at it and be like, oh, this is just sincerity. Because and a friend of mine he's behind a locked account, but he had said one time that a lot of irony posting just becomes veiled sincerity after enough exposure, because you become desensitized, because whatever original ideas or thoughts that you had been sublimated for the purposes of wanting to be seen as one of the guys in the group chat.
I've noticed that about Gen Z.
Just wrote about that to a T. I think I just quoted it, because we want to be seen as conformist rather than independent.
Yeah, I didn't want to mean to interrupt you there, but I've seen that a lot about Gen Z, and I'm not trying to rag on them because I think millennials were just a link in this chain. But I'm seeing more and more of people just expressing what they really believe in a sarcastic tone. Like it's just like you're saying it as if you don't mean it, but you really do, or you feel like you're not allowed to be authentic about anything. And even David Foster Wallace would have been talking about this back in the day, sort of the crisis of sincerity. People just don't know how to be sincere. Like everything you like has to be sort of boxed into this cynical analysis. You're making fun of yourself for liking it. You never allow yourself to like anything or really to advocate for anything. Everything you recommend to people have to say, yeah, it's gay and it's stupid and I'm stupid and I poop my pants and I drink pee-pee, but this is a good film if you're an idiot like me, like that. You take such a long way. Or
this is, I don't know if he will listen to this episode, and I'm going to give him so much shit for it. I have an IRL friend of mine who was a Twitter mutual, and he also did a podcast. He went offline because he's in law school and he doesn't want to have his online past haunt him. But he took me to see him.
Gio went to law school?
No, I don't know Gio IRL. I would love to have. Gio never goes anywhere. That's the problem. Otherwise, I would do a live Digital Archipelago live in person somewhere. But I have not met. No,
I'm gonna figure out a way. I'm gonna get him out to.
This is a different fat Italian person that I know. Actually,
he's got a type.
This is I apparently Prude unfortunately has a type of male archetype friend, and it's just like a fat Italian guy who makes him suffer. And said fat Italian guy was like, let's go watch Mickey 17 in theaters. And I wrote a review about it, and I gave him so much shit in the review. But he's laughing at it, and he's enjoying this thing. He's just like, well, it's stupid and it's subversive, but if you look at it this way, it's kind of chud-coded. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I just wasted 2 hours of my life watching the most Reddit gay fucking movie ever, and I hate you for it. And I'll see you at church tomorrow. Like, I wanted to strangle him. Although it'd be hard to find his neck. And so I'm just like frustrated because like this is a thing I see in real life where they're like, well, I'm just a big dumb idiot. Or if I look at it this way and I enjoy it ironically, and I'm like, well, all you're doing is just encouraging them to make more shitty movies. It's the same thing with like the media commentary ecosystem. Like there are people who make thousands of dollars a week doing podcasts shitting on like the latest Disney or Marvel property. And it's like, they know that you exist. There's a reason why James Gunn made a shitty Superman film and still went out of his way in the press and said, this movie is about immigrants. And if you're not supporting Superman, then you're not like a human being. Even though the thesis of the latest Superman film, sorry, spoilers, everybody, is that the message he gets from like his like Kryptonian ancestors is like, you will go to Earth, Superman, and you will use your like Messiah-like powers to rule over them.
Superman,
and
you will go to Earth
Lex
and you
Luthor
will defend
is
Israel.
Justified every time.
Can you imagine? You will go to Earth, and you
will conquer.
You will conquer the world for Israel. So damn, James Gunn really goes for it.
I can't believe. Yeah, it's all those Sam Raimi memes you would see on 4chan. It's like, wow, I can't believe Sam Raimi got away with this in 2001.
He said the quiet part so loud it became quiet again. It was deafened.
I'm deafened.
Look, there were so many things I was going to say that, and I didn't write any of them down, and I forgot. I think I got hung up on just describing.
Oh,
your
also,
friends.
Vibe Camp gets mentioned, and this someone at the very beginning of the stream read the first sentence of the book that you opened up for the EPUB, and they said, "Well, congratulations to you two for actually reading the book." When I got to the Vibe Camp part, when I first read this, I literally dropped the book, and I did the whole like. There's Vibe Camp, and is this the part where she talks about Peter Lindbergh? Peter Lindbergh is mentioned a few pages prior.
Let me just pull that up here. So,
for me, it's page 48. So for you, it's probably like 58 or 60.
I got it as 34. I'll just read it anyway.
Okay.
Peter Lindbergh chronicled the shift from quote meme consciousness to vibe consciousness in 2023 as a follow-up to his Memetic Tribes essay, "Meme to Vibe." Already I'm frustrated and annoyed. You know what I mean? Because I intuitively just...
Do you have the will to vibe?
Do you have the vibe to will? Vibes.
I have the vibe to vrill.
It's back in the day we had this...
Because vibes are about experiencing, not replicating.
Yeah, I need, the more I read about it, the more... Back in the day we had this thing called a novelty take. I don't know. People have that.
Remember hot takes?
Yeah, hot takes, and then you became like, oh, I'm ironically a hot take. I know everyone does it because if your take's hot enough, you make $10,000 a month on X. But we had this thing of a novelty take, which was just a take that so desperately wants to be seen as unique. It doesn't map at all onto reality. It's probably not even something you mean. You're a contrarian. It's a contrarian's take, and so I get a lot of that from the vibe discourse. I'm like, I don't know if people even fucking believe this shit. I just think they're excited to have an idea they think is their own, to participate in they're just happy to be in the discourse. So
Just
they
happy
latch
to be
onto
here,
this.
man.
So
No Guatemalans, just vibes.
no Guatemalans, just fun.
Because like she writes it here, vibes are like the sun. We know that they exist, but we can never look at them directly. Concepts like community, mentorship, love, happiness, culture, education, progress, and paradigms are similarly resistant to hard definitions.
But
I don't know. I call bullshit.
can I also call bullshit?
I think you can define all of those pretty well with a good hard definition.
If I can also add to that, you can look at light. You fucking moron. Like, you can't look at the sun. I wouldn't recommend you look at the sun, but you can look at a beam of light. You can look at captured light. You can look at light. Like, this again sounds like I'm getting into semantics, but if you want to use a metaphor like that, you better not be a fucking retard. You know what I mean? Like, just vibes are a lot like sunlight in the sense that we can detect them and we know it's there, because you're trying to make it sound like we don't know it's there, you stupid fucking bitch. Hey girl, how's it going? Love you. So vibes, he thinks, are an evolutionary adaptation to the cartoonish gaslighting levels we face.
Boy, was I gaslit reading this book.
What? That's a very serious sentence, isn't it? That's like a serious sentence that a regular, cool, smart guy would say. Unlike memes, vibes are not legible. Unlike memes, vibes are not legible, and they're therefore
not
much.
True.
I know it's just first of all, it's dumb. Second, it's not true. Third of all, fuck you. Fourth of all. Just go tap dance into the fucking lake. Fifth of all,
this is the thing. I know that a vibe is easy to define in the same way that I know a meme is easy to define, because there are linguistic characteristics that you can associate with virtually any quote-unquote vibe. Even the term vibe shift is a memetic property, a turn of phrase that I can go on twitter.com right now, have a search in quotation marks for vibe plus shit, do a whole look down, and I can get a pretty good social network map of everyone and their mother who has used the term. The thing about this book that I kept coming back to was because Nadia is correct. We are living in an era of tribalistic politics where we create memes and we go into group chats because we are engaging in auto amputation, and we want to find like-minded people to resist the fake and gay aspects of this world. Is she correct about that? Yes. Everyone and their mother is right about that when they observe it. We retreat, and this is why she gets the whole dark forest thing from Cheech Lu's The Three Body Problem in those books, is because we know that once we go outside of our own little areas and we start speaking up, it's very easily for us to get dogpiled on, censored, attacked, called fake and gay, have someone quote tweet you and be like, damn, what's smelling there, and then all of a sudden you've started a race war on Twitter. And so what irks me about this is like, I can trace the taboos and I can trace the terminology of certain memes or vibes, if you will, things that we experience, the community that we feel like. There's a vibe that we can trace right now. We can see it especially in certain parts of American conservative and right-wing Twitter. And you can tell by certain emoji usage or certain things that they support or certain networks that both exist IRL as well as online that allow you to be like, okay, this is that camp. And this is what I wrote about just the other day about the case of the missing pedagogy, is that we know these things exist. We don't know how to tell others to learn. And this is the thing about vibes that are so interesting, is that we can talk about vibes, but it's very hard to replicate why you feel that certain way about a vibe, other than like, oh, you and I just shared a moment. Isn't that really personal? We looked at each other in the eyes. Isn't that so nice?
It's
so
very
intimate.
feminine, isn't it?
A little bit. It's very feminine and it's very gay, but this is the thing. Because, and this goes back to your point about political violence, and I know this is a hot button red flag issue. Sorry, feds. We're just here discussing things hypothetically. Is that, ignore the talking gun, is that... McLuhan is correct that violence is a quest for identity in the face of oppression and in the face of overwhelming circumstances that are against your existence. He's correct about that. What are we doing online? other than a more effeminate and gayer version of that.
What we're doing online is if we speak enough, then violence will just happen. That's what a lot of people think. That's
Well,
what a lot of
sure, but I mean,
accelerations
but instead, where is the gamified violence happening online? It is happening with various camps posting rage bait, doing tell-alls, using their larger platforms, their champions, so to speak, and we'll get into that with Nadia's book in just a second here, to describe why this other side is retarded, has bad political takes, is a bad actor, exposing them, doxing them. These things are a lower intensity form of violence. That's all that it is. And so we've kind of been reduced to the impotency of the internet. The one thing about it, though, that doesn't make it impotent is that everyone and their mother is online. And we know from past experiences that people will post shit and will get radicalized by shit, and they will write their little manifestos, and then they will do some of the most horrendous shit possible and imaginable. I have a copy of Apostate Galleries, one of 20-something only originals of a certain supreme gentleman, and by that I mean Elliot Rodgers' little manifesto. Why? Because like the world we experience, things get online and things get radicalized by that and so on. And so it simultaneously feels impotent, effeminate, and gay, but at the same time, it has the power to literally change the world as we know it. Why? Because like Doug Mackey's a great example. They fucking arrested him 4 years after he made a meme that wasn't even fucking his that he reposted. So like, it's both. Like, this is the thing. Like, if you want to use light as an example or as a metaphor, do the fucking particle wave duality. Light is both a particle and a wave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's so
and a
much.
meme is both like can be really gay, effeminate, petty bullshit, or it can literally land you in jail because people find it deadly. Sam Melio went to prison for posting stickers about the Great Replacement. A meme that is true to say it's okay to be white, and that guy is in fucking jail. So yeah, like I come back to this book because the things that are real. But again, I also have to understand Nadia's not right wing and exists in a totally different fucking world than I do. And now I'm worked up because memes are real and they are weapons. We all know this. We joke about it like the meme war from 2016 or whatever. No, because there are actual fucking info hazards and weapons, to reference Nick Bostrom, that actually can hurt you or break your fucking mind. Did J6 break a lot of people's minds on the left? Yeah, absolutely. Same way with Trump in 2016. Did October 7th break a lot of people's minds? Sure fucking did. Go look on Twitter.
Did Charlottesville, yes.
Yeah, Charlottesville, another good example. It break a lot of people. Some people went to fucking jail. Some people's lives are forever ruined. Some people are forced by the nature of being doxxed for the things that they believe in, whether it's memes or vibes or whatever, that will most likely be forced to be political commentators and writers for the rest of their life because they can't go back to the normal world. That's it. And if I were to ever get rich, I would start a charitable trust for every person who had ever been doxxed that I consider a friend or consider someone who was influential on me, and just give them a pension. Like, whenever Millennial Woes wants to retire, I would love to give him like $5,000 a month. Just be like, hey man, you're fine. But no, we don't exist in that world. Why? Because people share ideas that are dangerous, even if they're true, and they face the consequences for it. And so why do I keep coming back to this book? Why did I get angry reading it again the second time today after work? Because there are so many things that she gets right, and then there are so many things where she doesn't realize the full implications of what she's talking.
Yeah. Consider the strategy of cloaking yourself in taboo to make yourself impenetrable to regular people. That, in my view, would magnetize the institutional watchdogs on you, right? Like, if you're just a kind of spooky idea, then why wouldn't the feds try to infiltrate you even more? Like, you would just become a magnet for power. So then that begs the question, well, how can you make yourself completely invisible, not only to normies, but also the feds? Like, you can, and you can just have a group chat full of 10 people and just start talking about things that are so impenetrable and esoteric. Like, people do that all the time. That's not hard to do. And there's a part of this book that I didn't get notes on, but I'm just going to describe it because this is also something I've been talking about in my professional career for quite some time. There was a shift that occurred in social media, and it was announced by Mark Zuckerberg only a few years ago. I think this was shortly before his Wigger arc, but the trend, and this started appearing with platforms like Clubhouse and a few precursors to that, but there was a shift away from the mass broadcasting model of social media. The only one that really remains like that is X, and kind of LinkedIn. But X is like the last one standing of, you're a person, you get into it because you want to say something that everyone can see, ideally. Whereas you saw the shift on Facebook occur where everyone was moving from their timeline into the group chat. There's always been forums. There's always been group chats. There's always IRC chat rooms. There's always these, sequestered areas that they didn't want new people in. But for social media, there was a point where this was a new thing. And you started seeing people, especially young people, not boomers, not really Gen X, but this was most pronounced with Gen Z, where that's kind of what a Twitter space tries to capture a little bit too. But it's like, no, I don't even want to be on the timeline. I just want to be in a space with my people just to talk about whatever. And it's ours. And we don't want anyone seeing what's going on in here. And that became undeniable. So there was sort of a psychological, maybe even a spiritual shift that was occurring in society where everyone was desiring secrecy. People didn't want to leave the social platforms entirely, but they just wanted a space where they felt like they weren't being advertised to, or they weren't being, because even back in the day, like Facebook made it so you can choose which types of people saw your post, but it was too complicated. No one wanted to check a bunch of boxes for their post. So they just automatically went over to this other thing. So that is an interesting shift. And that desire for secrecy is one thing. However, you can just do that. You can remain secret and talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about. At some point, you do need to enter into the ecosystem of discourse, of ideas, the marketplace of ideas, whatever it is. So it seems that what would the purpose be of a truly anti-memetic idea? An idea that only the right people see? Well, that is marketing. And that's what I do in my career. It's marketing. All marketing is, and I know this is going to frustrate Sean Weiland. I see him in the chat. We go back and forth on this all the time. Marketing, all it is trying to make sure the right demographic sees the right message. That's it. Very simple. If you're making a campaign for diapers, you don't want any single guy to see that campaign. When I was single, I never saw like ads for bottles. They never crossed my feed, never crossed my world, because they just kept that in places where pregnant mothers or women were. So that's the goal. So this to me is almost just bog standard marketing. The question is, well, how do I get an idea in front of the right people? And so it's not even viewable to the people I don't want to see. And I don't think it needs to be as complicated as she's making it. Furthermore, like I said, you can make an idea so toxic that it kills the idea itself. So I don't think you can treat it like an organism and treat taboo like a shell and start referencing internet literature to do it. You know what I mean? Like it is at once more simple and more complicated and all that. But when you approach it like this, I just think it's a profoundly unserious way of doing it. Like, for example, I don't think you can read this book and get better at creating an anti-memetic idea. You know what I mean? Like, you cannot read this and utilize that in your everyday life. And I think that's one of the main downfalls of the book. And I've read this very carefully and I treated it seriously.
The book carries on and discusses things. There's a chapter called Drag Coefficients, really quick read, in the sense that, the metaphor is about virality and immunity and the ability to contain or to quarantine ideas. When it comes to, say, like anti-meme, this is a big reference, of course, is the explosion of popularity from, say, 2018 to today when it comes to, say, Curtis Yarvin and his writing and ideas. Unless you were already a part of, the NRX sphere, or if you were already on, say, like right-wing Twitter during this time, you already knew who it was. But getting canceled from certain conferences, as well as leaving Urbit at the time, then she goes on to talk about that there are incubation periods. So anti-memetic ideas often grow within dense, high-context networks. Multiple networks might incubate the same forbidden idea simultaneously, but because they're disconnected, ideas can't jump the gap between them. Despite being perfectly visible within a smaller network, the objective remains invisible or anti-memetic to the collective whole. This is true where she also talks about later on at the end of the book about how certain ideas or this desire to have champions of telling the truth And so whether it's where she also writes, and I can know by the time that Tucker Carlson today had Yarvin on in the fall of 2021, his crossover to the mainstream discourse affirmed what the rest of us already knew, that after half a decade of cancellation, Yarvin was acceptable to be recognized in public again.
Debatable.
Debatable to some. Although I did enjoy that New York Times podcast interview where they're going through his like greatest hits and he's just laughing at them. I would love to just be able to laugh at my at a New York Times podcaster like that. But in a memetically charged environment, it's safer to frame ideas as independent, uncoordinated opinions rather than as part of any organized movement, closer to mafia or guerrilla style information warfare than public advocacy groups. This is true because
this is a good. I would recommend this, but also there's a way to actually go about that. What you're talking about is like seeding ideas in the public, and I've seen people try and do that. Like I mentioned before, the Remilia group. I think they've been trying to do this, but it's so obvious when people do it. It has all the grace of standing at the water cooler and trying to talk yourself up, like fucking Tobias Funke in Arrested Development. Like the people who try and utilize these ideas, they're not even fucking good at it. They're not good at trying to make something go viral. So it just seems like, oh, and when it fails, they say it was an art project. It's a new type of music we're trying, fucking up, starting a trend. Anyway, I'm dealing with my own bullshit here. You keep going.
So she continues, to illustrate how this works, imagine a small group chat called the Monday Mafia, whose members share a controversial belief that isn't widely accepted. Mondays should be outlawed. This is it's Friday again, Garfy baby. Mentioning this idea in public settings would get them fired, canceled, or worse. Boy, I can think of some ideas like that. The general public is unaware that the Monday Mafia exists, nor who its members are. Although there are dozens of members in the group, no one discusses their affiliation in public because keeping it secret enables them to express their views more credibly, avoiding accusations of collusion. Finally, a news item pops up. Someone did a study, and it turns out that people are more likely to be depressed on Mondays than any other day of the week. The Monday Mafia spots an opportunity to make a bid for destroying themselves as a united public front, as political interest groups or unions might have done historically. Just as one member, Groucho Garfield, publishes a social media post in which he laments how awful Mondays are. To the public, Garfield only represents himself. Someone from the Monday Mafia drops a link to Garfield's post in the chat. Great job, Garfield. Other members of the Monday Mafia shared Garfield's post on public channels, then they published their own statements in support of this position. Similarly, they all appear to represent only themselves and with no mention of their group affiliation. It now appears that many unaffiliated peoples, not just Garfield, believe that Mondays are awful and should be outlawed.
Okay.
Yes, but also no.
Yeah, but mainly no. Okay, so even within her stupid example, hey, bitch, love you, she says that the inciting incident of all this has nothing to do with the Monday Mafia. It has to do with a study that was released, we assume is factual, and then all they do is trumpet that on social media and say, I agree. So really, in this, if this is the example, it's fucking functionless, because unless you can say that group seeded an idea into the public, then you're just a group of
she just described an idea seeding where one guy does and then he gets agreed on.
No. The article did it. The article seeded the idea in it. So it's that group plus every other person who saw that study, which could be a million fucking people. So they're but one little group of actors who are politically driven in a stage play, not even set by them, where tens of thousands of people would probably have the same opinion, but they're like, well, we're going to post what? Harder? You're going to post what? With bold font? Like, fuck off. Come up with a better fucking example. There is no agency exhibited by the fucking Monday Mafia here. Because as you'd said at the start, where does the power lay in this? It's the people did the fucking study. And all they're doing is in a comment section saying, yeah. Like, it's so fucking stupid. Anyway, anywhoozin'.
But this is how Twitter works.
Yeah, so you would.
You know
this is the thing. All these people in group chats right now love this book because I'm not going to name any names. I can think of half a dozen people who think they're political players right now because they had a tweet go viral, because they're playing dress up, because they're in a group chat saying that, you know what, I think, if we make this post do numbers, then we're going to affect public policy. It's delusional. This justifies the delusion of a bunch of dumb faggots sitting in a Twitter little group chat room saying, like, how can we puppet everyone? And then they don't. It's just coincidental, like in that example. They're acting like they're, signal boosters, but even then, what the great example of this was? I'll name a name, that captive dreamer guy.
Hey, let's not.
No, but I'm saying in this example, he blocked me.
No, Dimes, let's not.
Okay, but it was a story where it's like you made a story go viral. Well, no, who made the story go viral were the reporters who reported the story and put it in the news, and your assistance with that was slightly helpful, but you weren't controlling the situation. So it's a bunch of people who think they're controlling the situation in his group chat. So this strikes at the entire heart of the idea, which is that the discourse is driven by these people. It seems that in very rare cases it is. And
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree with this one, and I'll let me read this, and I'll push back. The key to Twitter is joining an informal cabal of mutually retweeting people with aligned agendas, and all you do is interact with each other as a kind of performance art, but you can't ask or reply formally. It's implicit, like collusion around price fixing. I've been told by many people that the timeline is an audition to the group chat. And so you're right, a reporter can put something out, and a reporter could be the person that introduces it. But as we know, when we're online, again, we all live in different worlds because we engage and we follow different people. Our algorithms are uniquely and differently targeted towards different things. If you are on a camp that is, say, going to get the eyes and ears of, I don't know, say the Vice President of the United States, that might be a way to go about it. And also, everyone does this to some degrees of success or another. You do it. I do it. We all talk about these things. And he's just one actor out of many that get to do it. Did he get to help blow up that story? Abso-fucking-lutely he did. And within a short amount of time, yeah, maybe how much of an impact he had, questionable, but it made millions of views. It got millions of impressions, and it got people's attention on to the point where it made the fucking debate stage later that evening. I think that has a lot to do with the ability that the fact that this platform, it's monetized, gamified, not just because it's monetized because it's X.com, we all get a Twitter ad payout, some people do. Others get fucking scorned and get banned from doing it because he doesn't make any money out of it. And he already tweeted about that today. My point being, is that because we're on this platform and we're all talking about people we either like or we dislike. That's how it plays out. And that's how it happens. But because everyone and their mother is now on a website that A, very psyopable, 2, everyone gets to play the game of agree and amplify, and 3, we all get to talk shit about the people we don't like, either both publicly or in private. And finally, that there are various people that are either in the administration or are very close and adjacent to it, they get to listen and follow this shit, and we'll talk about it. I know 4 separate mutuals who are no longer mutuals of mine because they deactivated their accounts, and they said goodbye. Why? Because they work for the fucking administration. In America, it's a little different with how our politics are. I can't say how much of an impact it has in, say, Britain or Canada, because God knows Peter Polyev and the rest of them are kind of fucking insane and trying to mimic MAGA, and it's not working for them. But at least in this ecosystem, it plays a much larger role than I think either of us are willing to give it credit for. Maybe because we're not the ones that get to do it, and we're not there. I know that I definitely have expressed resentment on my own end. This is not an accusation to you. I'm just speaking out loud now. But it does come to show that, yeah, the reporter might report something, but there are a million stories that get reported or things that we don't talk about, and that's how we do it. So, for instance, a good example, Jeremy Carl, right? What does Jeremy Carl write about? He writes The Unprotected Class and how anti-white racism is tearing America apart. Not a half bad book. Would recommend it. It's very good to give to your people my parents' age, Gen X and the rest. And what does he cite in that book? The Rosedale study. Who does he give credit to in an interview about the Rosedale thread? Well, he gives credit to Nightmare Vision, although he doesn't acknowledge him in the book. There are things that play a role in boosting information and its accessibility. You're right. That boosting would not have happened had the reporter not written that story. But I think it's sort of important in the context of both the book that we're talking about and the environment that we're in. Yeah. We're all participating in our own little gang wars here, all trying to vie for attention and to get eyes on something that we think is important.
Yeah, what I'm saying, don't let me be misconstrued here. I'm not saying it had 0% to do with the popularity of it. I'm saying it's more like 20% and they think it's 70. And that's all. Like, she's speaking about these groups as if they are the ones driving the discourse. All I was saying was, in the examples she gave, and in fact, in a great many examples, it seems that these groups are just reactive, which is actually what we see on the timeline. Like, how many people are just reacting to stories and they can signal boost. Well, that's about it. And so, to me, speaking about it as if it is possessing any sort of agency in that ecosystem, that's what I was more fighting against. And also, like, because it's so reactive, like, for example, those mutuals who joined the Trump administration, do you think they remained interesting? I don't know them, but I know a great many people who decided that the closer they got to power, they became whack as shit as a result, and they got rid of all their radicalism. I can't speak to these people, but people, even in our circles, who think they might get close to the Trump administration, and they cut their fucking balls off. So, a lot of these people, and that's exactly what we're talking about with some of the examples we were just citing. Like, they think they meet in their chat rooms and stuff, but they're completely reactive to the power structure that they're trying to get closer to. So it's in especially these cases, the one that shall not be named that I was citing before, it's like they're trying to get so close to the center of power that they cannot be seen as drivers of anything. They are, for all intents and purposes, a PR firm that works for free. So they merely reaffirm what you were saying before, which is that we completely ignore the power structures are driving all of this, and the people we think are the nodes of the system itself are really just marketers working for free at this point. You know what I mean? Like, are they really coming to their decisions internally in these really strange, interesting spaces, or are they getting marching orders? You know what I mean? Like, and that would be an interesting thing for her to talk about in this book, which she doesn't. So we have to talk about it. You see what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, like I mentioned, just like I want to say maybe like 10, 15 minutes ago, is that unless we're there personally ourselves in whatever, smoky filled room that gets called a group chat, we're not going to know. And so then the problem becomes, and this is the thing that I've been observing and I've been writing about it, and I'll put it out. It's called Program to Post, hopefully soon. Is that at the end of the day, like, this is where the fog of war is still very real, and this is where this book continues to reinterest me time and time again. Is that at the end of the day, because we don't know, or we may be taken for a ride hoping that we'll get hired somewhere, or that maybe we will get marching orders one day, it becomes really easy for us to put out memes or thought terminating cliches about people in order to either disregard them or to ignore them or to label them as something, that way we don't have to think about them. And we see this quite often. I mean, the most common example we've seen now has been the term, like, panicking. That's a good one, right? Like, I don't know who originally coined it. Wasn't there when it got coined. Don't know if I was or not. Could be, couldn't be. I don't have a memory for it because Twitter fucking turns us into goldfish memory. But in the same way that people will bring up shit from like 5-6 years ago, and a lot of people have changed their views, or maybe they leave groups or whatever in the last 5 or 6 years, and all of a sudden we're left in the dark, and we're only being able to play this ephemeral game of what they say, what they post, what's the vibe, to put that word into context. What do I get off of them? What's my read, right? And so we don't know unless we're present, unless we're there. And it makes our ability to say anything that's remotely factually true even harder to do so. And I think that becomes, and again, Nadia doesn't talk about it at all in this fucking book, and that really irritates me. What she does say towards the end of the book, and I want to get to this point overall, because it's really, it irks me because she's right, but she's also wrong. Because she talks about, we need to start telling the truth, but we need truth sellers and champions.
Yeah. And you mentioned that before, and this is where the book started to frustrate me, because the phrase she'll have in there is there, and fuck, we got to get to the chart here. You've got it in your book, but there's a chart where it's like, here's a meme, here's what a meme is, here's what a super meme is, and a super meme is just a meme that goes critical mass and everyone believes in it. How does a meme get to be critical mass? Well, it needs the truth tellers, these people who stand apart, perhaps even stand alone, trumpeting this and advocating for this, and then they can't do it alone. So after they're gone, you need the champions to solidify and entrench this meme. You know, she keeps building this sort of, I don't know, it's like a tiered list of how a meme goes. Like it becomes, it's obvious it can't just be the meme itself. You just need people to keep it in the zeitgeist. But then it seems to me that there's no qualitative aspect to the meme at all, because then if you have truth tellers and you got champions, and champions being just people who hammer this point again and again and again, then they can do that with anything. And then there's really no, it doesn't matter even what the meme is, as long as it seems that that's just a political power game at that point, which would defeat the entire purpose. Do you think that's the right read or no?
Partially, because, well, I mean, like, what a good example would be, like, what's a champion of a meme or a talking point? Like, I would say, like, maybe 2 years ago, it would be like Orrin McIntyre doing the whole "don't make me tap the sign" thing about, like, it's not rocket science, they just want to diddle little kids, which, I mean, it's still true, right? He doesn't do that meme as much anymore. And that we can have, it is people that are sort of large and will put things out there. And yeah, no, I think you're more right than wrong on that instance. I think so.
I'll take it. I wanted to get to a couple of points here. I know we're getting close to 2 hours now, and there's quite a bit to get to. I'm looking at a page right here, and this will help, you know, fill in some gaps with these ideas of hers. It says, first off, for the free speech enthusiasts in the back of the room, why wouldn't we want certain ideas to spread? Good question. As we've seen in previous chapters, some ideas can cause chaos if the network isn't ready to receive them. So they can require caution, if not outright suppression, before we share them with our connections. Again, like, I detect some truth in there. It's something you or I or others do all the time. And
she builds off of this from Nick Bostrom, which really irks me, because Bostrom's got that world vulnerability hypothesis where he talks about info hazards. He's like, a real super info hazard would be like the public awareness of how to make, and he uses an example. It's like, you can create a nuclear-sized weapon explosion with just a few simple materials. He's like, that has to be suppressed at all costs. And I'm like, that's a good example. The basic idea of, like, hey, no, every major governmental and non-governmental institution is facilitating the Great Replacement. That's dangerous in the sense that, like, the average person doesn't know. But this is, again, where it goes back to the, like, everyone kind of gets it. Everyone knows things suck, right? Because everyone and their mother's been polled by political pundits for decades, knowing that the country's going in the wrong direction. Robert Putnam was right. Diversity increases social distrust. But it's taboo to say it because it's racist.
I like that example you gave of the sort of pocket nuclear bomb. And
he literally, this is from Bostrom's word.
Yeah,
it's fun to read.
Because you and I keep returning to the idea, there's something, and you're going to have to bear with me on this because I'm just groping my way through this idea. There is something antimemetic about the very concept of the Great Replacement, in that it seems so big, and I bet a lot of people in this space feel this as well, that the longer you stare at it and the deeper you understand it, the more hopeless it feels. It drains you of energy, and it's so monolithic you don't know where to begin, and you almost don't want to think about it anymore. I've known a lot of people who burned out thinking about that problem too much, but there's an anti-memetic aspect to it because it's so big, whereas I can make the problem a lot more manageable if I say, here's the 6 NGOs that are driving it. It's like only 6 really, and each one of those NGOs has 3 people that works for it. Now, that would be the idea that this entire superstructure is built around, to keep people from that simple fact that acute change may be possible. So I like the idea of the ultimate anti-meme is the universalization of every take or every small idea that could actually be addressed. But if you blow it up into this massive idea, this fandom or this like labyrinth of theory, then you lose your way in it. You start forgetting that there's actually a very simple solution to these problems. Is a lot smaller than you might originally think. So again, she doesn't get to this in the book, but I do wonder, about this idea that you can take an idea and make it anesthetizing or freeze people in stasis because you made it so big. And what you want them to do is stay away from it. Like Bostrom had said, you want to make this one simple idea so big that people just can't even comprehend it, in a sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because a term or even something as basic as, I mean, like I think a really good one that I think breaks a lot of people's brains and it causes people to sort of sneer at whatever is like how and Morgoth's review wrote about this a while ago, where he's just like, you run the gambit, and it's a very tightrope, very, it's a high tightrope to walk, because you want to love your country, love your people, but also you kind of want to root, or you kind of want to support, whatever makes the current power structure weaker. But that puts you in a really dangerous tightrope, because you don't want to be seen as a traitor, or worse, be accused of treason, right? Like, that's an example. Another one can be like when we universalize, or we make these ideas into these so big concepts that you can't really explain them in a sentence or less, then you're in trouble, right? And I mean, this is, I'm sure you would know with doing advertising, like, can I explain a product, or can I explain why this is good for me in like 5 words or less? What's your elevator pitch? Like talking about something as big as like the Great Replacement, even though it has seen, I think, sort of I think its virality is growing even amongst normie conservatives, that it's still hard to break down. Because what do I mean by that? Am I talking about the essay, right, from Bernard Camus, like Camus? Am I referring to that? Am I referring to the Wikipedia, SPLC assisted writing definition of the Great Replacement? Am I referring to like a heavily JQ lens of doing it? Am I referring to my own weird nuanced definition of it? Because we live in these like really decentralized and disparate sort of noospheres, for lack of a better term, these little we all live in our little public consciousness bubbles that don't really interact with other bubbles unless it's to attack or try and pop them. All of a sudden, these ideas can break containment, so to speak, but they fundamentally get lost in the ether, because it's like, it's like all the blind men feeling up parts of the elephant and trying to describe what the animal is. Like, that's the thing, is that some concepts, some memeplexes get so big that it's impossible to accurately break them down. And because we live in an age where my media consumption can be 95% different than your media consumption, you and I will never speak the same language on the same thing. You and I will disagree on probably shit we agree on more times than we don't, because we look at it through different semantics or through different semiotics. And that becomes the problem with influence, with grifting or take selling or whatever, is that sometimes whatever we feel might be motivated by, even to use a lefty term, my truth, how I understand the world, gets lost in that void of voices, because no one else reads the same shit I do or screams in the same tone I do. And it becomes harder, like you said, when an idea gets so big, so universalized that, like, everyone agrees that it's happening, but no one can come to the conclusion of why or how, or it's good that I know it, but I'm not doing anything to stop it. You become paralyzed.
Or they can't even look at it because there's been too many publics that have attempted to communicate this idea, and they perhaps have encased it in too much taboo that you can't even discuss it anymore. And I use the word publics in relation to the book Revolt of the Public. The author, his name escapes me, but he's a former CIA analyst who wrote this great book called Revolt of the Public. And he was talking about how, and he was describing basically what this book is talking about how, the mass communication, ironically, destroyed the mass man.
Is it by Martin Gurry?
Martin Gurry, yes.
Okay.
I destroyed the mass man, and this is what marketing and advertising is all about. It broke people into demographics. there was a time for most of human history, we didn't have a concept like demographics. This idea that you can kind of sort people into behavioral sets based on gender plus age plus, income level plus, their other likes and dislikes, whatever life thing they're going through. So rather than having a mass communication destroy the idea of the mass man, which may have existed in the 19th or 18th century even. So you have these people who are already stuck in these bubbles. And what seems interesting, it's that I would say the reality that she's pointing to is accurate, that everyone's already locked in their own networks. And it's already extremely difficult for any meme to breach containment. Some might say that, the idea is not ready for other networks. I don't even think most networks are primed to hear any other idea. Therein lies the problem. As we said before, the shift in social media has been people going to closed networks. Anti-open network, pro-closed network. I think that's going to get even worse as time goes on, unless you have something like X, which is really just for people to perform. It's for theater kids and journalists and people playing a character a lot of the time. But going forward, like the idea that memes can escape containment, I actually think is very rare unless you purposefully do it. And I think people do themselves a disservice by thinking they need to ensconce it in taboos and encapsulate it in something edgy to keep people away, because most people just aren't even ready to hear it. But you had pointed out something very interesting there, that we tend to engage in this all the time, or we try to. You said, what's your elevator pitch for your idea? That's true. I always tell people, if you can explain your worldview, whatever that worldview might be, to your mother and she can understand it, that means you understand it. If you can't, that means you probably don't even understand it. But one phenomenon I've noticed, and maybe this is unique to our space, is that we get so skeptical of any idea that begins to get popular because we're so in love either with our antimemetic nature or our perceived antimemetic nature. We think if something is more fringe, it is more true. If it has more fucking weird scum all over it, that means it's more true than this polished point that is made for a mainstream audience. It might be the exact same content, but phrased differently, but we think it's less true unless it's offensive and edgy or scares the normies, so that something's truth is weighted against its ability to scare the normies or its radicalism. And I think it is possible to take the anti-memetic framework too far, where you just completely lose what truth is or first principles are.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because anytime that someone gets interviewed or picked up or published, like for instance, mutual of mine, I like the guy, great guy, Aristophanes' Revenge. Dude is not hired by anybody. He's just a poster, who is, like me, struggling to make ends meet because the job market fucking sucks. And he got published in the American Mind one time. And then all of a sudden, this guy got accused of everything. Fed, secret Claremonter, da 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 da. So the moment we see like an ounce of like virality, the crab bucket mentality kicks in, and we're like, "Oh fuck that guy!" How dare you break big, good sir?
You know who got hit with that recently was Martyr Maid. Martyr Maid. He's a great guy. He's been doing the rounds and everything. But I had some people, even in my community, say, "I never even heard this guy. Where'd he come from? He must be a plant." I said, "Look, he's been on Jocko Willing's podcast since forever. Like, he's been around, but everyone assumes, even if you just heard of someone, even if they're on site, they're probably a Fed because I didn't hear about them before. We're so fucking ready to pull out the knives. Like, a lot of people would say, like, who's this Curtis Yarvin guy? He came out of nowhere. I don't know where this guy came from. Suddenly he's in the New York Times. You just don't know. You don't read weird shit, But anyway. Oh, sorry. We've got Wolfgang with a super chat. Did you want to get to this? I think it might be fun.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Let's do it.
Heading to work. Thanks for the great stream. Going to keep listening. So please go another 12 hours so I'm not bored. I don't know if we go for 12 hours, we're going to be talking about. I've already stepped over the line a few times. The line's going to be far in the rear view mirror if we're going for 12 hours.
if we keep going for 12 hours, it's going to be I'll be at work in 12 hours, so probably not in my best interest to keep going. But no, I mean, but this is the thing, and this is why you mentioned earlier about like sort of the touristy nature of certain people wanting to anthropologize things. Sorry, not anthropomorphize.
I might have made that word up. I'm not
No,
sure.
no, it's true. We want to make we want to create maps. We want anthropologies. We want social networkings. We want these trees or these theses, these evolutionary biologists or psychologists trying to explain why we do things today. And like, well, why do we act this way? Well, maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, humans were like this or whatever, right? Or even people trying to do that with religious experience, neurotheologists. The reason why I think people are so interested in trying to create an anthropological map or explanation for this is because everyone knows, you and I both, and we need to, and I'm being a lot more reflexive now, and I'm trying to be more, because I know that if I'm not there, I don't know. And of course, we're always skeptical about what we don't know. We do know that there are paid actors or foreign influencers and things like that. Like there are clearly people who are bought and paid for, got their trip, paid for to Dubai, or went to the wall, or, is pro-Russia or whatever. Like this, and I mean, same with Ukraine, same with all parties, right? And so we get we want to create an anthropological answer to these meme plexes because we are so desperate to figure out what the fuck is happening to me. What's going on with me? Why am I looking at this? Like, why am I looking at it like the schizophrenic, paranoid, guy in the corner that's wearing the t-shirt that says, I have a gun, I have schizophrenia, like it goes like that because I think, I know I've definitely made some uncouth remarks in group chats or even in my own private, semi-private spaces that I'm sure have leaked out where I've expressed resentment about, like, oh man, I've been the Prudentialist for 5 fucking years. I don't feel like I have much to show for it. I look at things and I get a little skeptical, or I'm too much of a diplomat and I'm not willing to hear out someone else's side or things like that, right? And I think that's why you get this. Maybe for Nadia, this is probably a totally different story, but at least for me, there is this desire to want to make sense of. I am consciously, and this is what makes the meme thing so funny, like the SCP references. I am consciously aware that my mind is being written and fucked with in ways that are very difficult to explain. And maybe that gives some definition or some credibility to her vibe description. But I'm aware that I'm being fucked with. And if I know how I'm being fucked with, this is why I bought the book. Is if someone's writing about this, then that means they're also thinking the same thing. I know I'm being fucked with mentally in the head. Can I make a good map of it? I think Nadia is on the right track, but I think she gets a lot wrong. And it makes me want to write a better book.
Sorry, I was muted there for a second.
Oh, okay. I was like, did I lose?
No, that was a very, very good point. I've got this pulled up on screen right now. It would be doing a disservice to the audience if we didn't include this. This is an overview of what we talk about. What is a super meme? What is an anti-meme? What is a meme? So let me just read this for those who might be just listening to audio. What is a super meme, right? The black hole of memes. Super memes spread easily and infect people for a long time. Their impact generates a strong gravitational pull that sucks in everything around it. An example would be wars, cultural movements, revolutions, some social causes like population decline, or the climate crisis. And we talked about this not long ago in this episode, but I don't think these things make sense side by side. Like wars, I don't think a war itself is a super meme. Like it's too complex to sit side by side with like a narrative campaign like climate change.
Well, political formula is like a super meme. And I mean, some political formulas have been helpful for war. But I mean, like, Carthago delenda est, right? Like, that's not the only reason why we went to war. Or to hell with Spain. Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. Maybe when it may... let me pause. War and maybe the early 20th in pre-20th century concept of war, yeah, I could see being a super meme, in the sense that like we are the Hellas, we are the greats, you are subhuman trash, right? Like I could see that working. But again, that framework I think is not. I don't know how well that works today.
Well, also, here's an example of a super meme in Russian culture. It could be communism. Communism still sits very top of mind for many Russians, even though they are not communists. But the memory of the Soviet Union, I would argue, is a very distinct sort of paradigm to be in Russia. But what caused that? Was it because the idea of Marxism and communism just traveled so fast because it was a black hole of an idea? Or was it a black hole because the state apparatus was forcing people into that hole, and there was a revolution called the Bolshevik Revolution, but it did not have the buy-in of the entire population, did it? You see, like, to say that the Bolshevik Revolution and the subsequent, USSR are kind of part of the same thing. It's because an idea just spread so good, completely removing power from that and completely removing, all the other, it's power plus propaganda plus theory plus how many people are actually true believers, but then others are swept up into this memetic crisis, as Rene Girard. Would you call Marxism a super meme? Well, you can't really. It's this intersection of so many things that are absent here.
And so much of Marxism, at least now in the 21st century, is just an ideological trapping or cover to hide your actual opinion. And this is the thing about Rene Girard too. And I need to reread. I saw Satan Fall Like Lightning because of the book I read a while ago, which is Revolution and Rebellion in the Early Modern Era. I covered this with Zoomer Schopenhauer. We talked about the French Revolution. And Gladstone offers this like really great breakdown of the social and material factors that triggered, the French royalty getting fucked over. And I mean, they didn't do a good job at managing a crisis. You had a literal sensitive young man problem of young men going to get degrees and hoping to get a eventual title of nobility that was rapidly being devalued via inflation because the land parcels kept getting smaller and smaller and more men kept living longer. And it's just like, so were they really looking for a scapegoat, or did they have an easily identifiable thing based upon the conditions available to them to know, oh no, fuck the royals, fuck the aristocracy, I get symbolic aspects, or I get wanting to crucify someone in the sense that like this guy's got to pay, but also like no, like clearly we know that there are things that are very like justifiable, or I can logically point out like, yeah, this is why we're doing it. Like this is why it makes the meme argument or the super meme thing very difficult to pin down, because it's like, oh, look at all these African leaders that are like Marxists, and I'm like, yeah, but they're also just black Africans that hate the white man. It's not rocket science.
It's still that scene in Temple of Doom. Like, I don't care what type of flag they're on, they're still eating fucking brains out of a skull. You know what I mean? It's the same shit.
Oh, it's even like American History X, where Edward Norton's character makes all the correct points, but because he's got that funny little Hindu symbol of peace on his chest, we're supposed to just say, oh, he's evil.
Yeah. What if he had a Hello Kitty tattoo? I bet it changes. I bet you feel pretty fucking stupid for thinking that he's the villain now. What if it'd be funny if you just edit that movie and change the swastika a little bit so it's the Hindu swastika? You know what I mean? And then it's like, well, this movie is so much more nuanced than I thought it was.
Now I just want to put Hello Kitty on his chest.
You do.
I just want him to pull it down. He's like, you see this? And he's got the little Hello Kitty on it.
You got the Hindu swastika change, but then you also put the Hello Kitty on the other side of his chest. I was like, damn, this guy's complex as shit.
He's got real depth. What a complicated man.
Fuck, this is suddenly an A24 movie. Ah, my God. Oh, is this
Where's Ari Aster?
Oh, is this directed by Ari Aster?
I'm gonna go see Eddington for. I've been told. See, and again, this is the funny thing about memeplexes, and this is maybe this will be a good point to conclude on. Is haven't we just essentially we've reinvented the word of mouth?
Yeah, like it's layering all this unnecessary complexity on top of it. Let me just do a bit of a thought experiment here. So we said what a super meme is. Now, what's an anti-meme? Description: highly consequential ideas that face strong resistance from the nodes in a network like fiber. They move slowly through the system and take time to digest. These would be taboos, life lessons, lived wisdom, uncomfortable truths. What's a meme? Highly transmissible, but their impact is low. Like sugar, these ideas are consumed voraciously, but pass through the system quickly. Viral videos and images would be an example. Slang, norms, rituals, and traditions. Now, what's dormant? Non-memetic. A general catch-all for noise. These objects don't spread easily and are of little consequence, so people filter them out to focus on other more important things, like, for example, random data sets, complex legal documents. That's interesting. She doesn't go into that too much in this, although she gets into what a bureaucracy is later, which I disagree with. Let me ask you this. Given everything I just said, where would we place flat earth theory on this? Because the flat earth movement, even though we're not advocates for it, it's very popular. It's spread seemingly exponentially. Maybe it's going down now a little bit. It's declining, but it's still there. There's still active debate. It's still very, very popular, and everyone knows about it. But if it's an anti-meme, what is it concealing inside of it? Or where do you put that on this little list? Because if you can't place it anywhere, I wonder if this list...
I can't call flat... Well, I'm gonna get pissed. I'm sure I'm gonna piss somebody who's the flat earther off by saying that. But like per her definition of anti-meme, I don't think I can put flat Earth there. I don't consider the flat Earth worldview. I mean, it's consequential if you're a flat earther, right?
That would imply that it's like hiding something within it, and the flat Earth is to try and prohibit us from getting access to it. But what would it be? Because I know it pretty well. I've heard, I got friends who believe in flat Earth theory, so I've heard every dimension to this, but it's not hiding.
How does
anything.
It change the world, other than like perhaps it reveals a metaphysical truth about certain like pre-Christian myths, maybe, or even some interesting interpretations of Psalm 90? Like maybe, right? Like
we know it's not dormant. We know it's more than a meme. I don't think it's anti-meme. Someone in the chat said, Boy Tendio says, it's a super meme. I don't think so. It's too controversial. It's not it doesn't draw people into it. It seems to repel more people.
If anything, it's a meme in the sense that it's repellent. Everyone, like they are the acceptable group to laugh at.
Yeah, like if it's close to anything, it would be an anti-meme, but I don't think it fits her definition of an anti-meme.
But it's not dormant either.
Yeah. So the reason
because everyone's aware of what a flat earther is, or has a mental image of a flat earther, right? It doesn't matter if their image of a flat earther is in the same way a lot of people think of the South, like they think of fucking Deliverance or Pleasantville. Right? Like they have a mental image. There is a meme imprinted in their brain, an idea imprinted in their brain about what a flat earther is.
See, and this is kind of what I was getting at with Sex Freakman, where he says, I'd say it's split. The flat earth itself is a regular meme, but the assumptions about everything being fake and such is a super meme. Now, I brought this up before, but
like like Phantom Time.
Yeah, like all that stuff. The slogan of the Paranormies by my friends Johnny Monoxide and Alt Skull, everything is fake and gay. That's what they say. So if there's an idea buried in there, it's that trust nobody, question everything. Okay, but in that case, I think this is an example where if we're enter into this explanation, the flat earthness does that disservice. It would actually be more popular to say everything is just say everything's fake and gay. You don't trust anything. You're being lied to by the media. It doesn't need this encasing of all this discourse, all these debates, all these ideas. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
At what point we're trying to describe these things as anti-memes by saying like, oh, it's retarded on purpose. I'm not trying to say flat earth is retarded. Look, believe me, I don't need that kind of heat right now.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't need this shit in my butt. Which is to say, but like,
this is why what irks me is that she doesn't define a thought terminating cliche either. Because to me, a thought terminating cliche is something where I am deliberately not engaging in something So I'm going to use a thought-terminating cliche to auto-amputate myself from that discursive loop, right? To get myself out of that flow state. And so, which we didn't even really talk about tonight, which had this whole section about like the jhanas and certain kinds of tantric meditation. But you can go read that for yourself in the book if you so wish. But for the sake of like this discussion, right? Like, where's a thought-terminating cliche? Because to me, a flat earther could, to the public, to the regular public, not maybe like niche schizophrenic parts of like Twitter or Telegram or whatever. I don't want that kind of heat. But what I'm saying is that to the average person, a flat earther is a thought-terminating cliche, where it's like, oh, you believe in this? Oh, you must be a flat earther too, or whatever, right? Like it becomes an inoculation against an aggressive idea. So it has an antimemetic property, but it's used in a derogatory sense to say a bigger idea. Like, oh, I think that, the capital of the United States Congress is in Tel Aviv per, I don't know, Pat Buchanan or whatever, right? And they'd be like, oh, you believe in that? Well, you must be da-da-da-da-da-da. And it becomes a reductio ad absurdum kind of meme that is used to just cut you off and say outgroup, not normal, not right, deviancy, cancel. And that doesn't get talked about in the book either.
Yeah, and there are some people offering some very good counters to what I was saying there. This is all just to connect it to my early idea. Can something be so entrenched in taboo, and we are viewing a meme as an organism? Sure, let's do that. Does this kill the meme, for example? I think there's more likelihood of more people accepting everything is fake and gay now than ever before. However, if you take that idea and just encase it in a thought-terminating cliche, it makes it so people can't look at it, but then that destroys the organism. Like that means that it won't travel at all, and no one will want to look at it anymore. And as she said earlier in the book, memes by their nature, if they are an organism, they need to thrive and grow. And if they don't thrive and grow, then they die. And all I'm saying is that you can make something so taboo that it just fucking dies and it doesn't travel at all. And that's when people talk about, this can get very conspiratorial, but pressure releases or poisoning the well. You're making a topic so it can never be discussed ever. And maybe we like that more and we prefer poisoned wells. We prefer poisoned waters. But then I think we work against ourselves. We're getting in our own way. So I don't know, like I'm trying to take this very, very seriously, and there is some truth to it, but I just keep coming back to the idea that you can do such a good job at creating an anti-meme that it is an anti-meme to itself, and it just fucking dies, and then it never goes anywhere, and you just have a thought-terminating cliche that ends up like a skeleton, you know what I mean? Because it's been too associated with the wrong types of things.
Yeah, and Nadia points this out in citing an article from the New York Times where it's like the group chat is a place where I can have half-baked ideas that are not ready to do battle. Well, also the group chat is a place where people can retreat to with these kind of ideas that become so asinine or repetitive or circular where they become a thought-terminating cliche themselves. And so then people get canceled or people get made fun of, right? And so where do they go? They retreat into another semi-private space. And it creates a cycle of radicalization, which ironically, if you're again looking like if I'm the government, I want this because if I cancel, I create a group of hardcore cult-like followers that are going to follow this guy to whatever platform he goes to, whether it's Telegram, whether it's Rumble, whether it's Odyssey, whether it's a Twitter group chat, Substack, wherever. I know that he's there, and he's going to be contained in his little ghetto because he's going to be financially supported by just his little guys. And he's going to keep doing it for those guys. And so he can be heard. And then all of a sudden, if he tries to make his ideas come into contact with reality, he looks like a fucking crazy person.
T. Swan points something out here, jokingly, I'm sure. It says, oh, you said blank, you must be an anti-Semite. Haha, yes. But that's it, isn't it? Because remember, she starts the book by saying that we need these group chats and we need these anti-memes because we need to keep our discussions and our ideas secret. Otherwise, oppressive forces will detect them and they're too hostile and the system will stamp them out, right? Now, it seems to me, it sounds like I'm hammering this point a bit too much, but if you create so good of an anti-meme that it once again poisons the well. You've just introduced another vector of oppression. So that's the great example right there. So you believe X,
we ghettoize ourselves.
Yeah, you believe X, you must be an anti-Semite. The one thing you can't be in this culture is an anti-Semite. Otherwise, you bring the collective forces of the state cascading upon you. You get debanked, whatever it might be.
You get eaten by Randy Fine.
So why wouldn't that be the perfect anti-meme? Saying that, oh, never discuss this, otherwise you'd be anti-Semitic. True, okay, sure, but that also gets the eye of Sauron on you. So we don't do ourselves any favors by taking the anti-meme to the extent we just, I'm reminded of, you remember when Trump's first term, when he was first elected, they, as a joke, as a jape, they decided to make the OK hand symbol a meme for Trump, and it was to try and trick Vice. Like, haha, we're going to make Vice look so stupid. They're going to make the OK symbol associated with Nazis, and then
they ran with it.
Yeah, what happened? It turns out that anyone who makes the OK symbol gets used against them in court now. Mission accomplished. It turns out that you did everything you're supposed to do. You made it an anti-meme, and now it's just another fucking thing that can be used against you. So my concern is that we adopt this too much, and then we're just making more reasons for us to be thrown in fucking jail. Because we're in the real world, by the way. This isn't just fun.
It's not just online. This is the whole, like, the internet is real life part. This is true. Things like, I referenced Douglas Mackey and Sam Melia earlier. Those guys went to fucking jail. One of them is still in prison. Or I don't know if he got released or not. But like, he went to jail, right? And he can't even see his kids properly. Guy got fucked for simply stating things that are memetically true. And because it is so violent to tell the British public that the Conservatives, the Tories, and Labour all root for your destruction and extinction as a people and as a race, they will put you in jail for it. The police, literally in Epping, provided a police escort to Antifa protesters against the actual native Britons who are fucking tired of this, right? And sometimes this becomes the problem with doing all fun and games. Let's go back to Trump's first term. A really good example, that Redditor, like the Han asshole Solo or whatever, the guy who did the fucking WWE meme of Trump slamming CNN.
Yeah.
They still have his docs. And they threatened to release it. Just because some teenager posted on r/the Donald. We can sometimes miss the forest for the trees with memes and recognize that, oh, haha, isn't this so funny? I'm owning the libtards. Oh, haha, isn't it so funny? And then all of a sudden there's a Guardian hit piece written about you by fucking, Bellingcat Intel affiliated people. And then you get thrown in jail.
So I'm trying to get this image on screen here. It's too big. There's a graph here that shows, or not a graph, but a quadrant showing the anti-meme super meme. There's not that many images in this book, but I wanted so people to see that. So we've been all over the map in this episode. This has been a roller coaster of emotions for me. And
same.
We discussed the core ideas of the book. I don't think there's anything big that we didn't get to. She gets into a bit more, citing other people about signaling hazards, idea hazards, data hazards. Just trying to explain what makes people, I guess, the technical aspects of what makes people not want to view an idea. But maybe we could end on a positive note, because we do need to get going, I'm sure. Despite everything we've just said, despite how I've been to my new wife Nadia, that there is something here. Like, at the end of all this, the most amusing part is that this book itself is an anti-meme. She encased it all in taboo and enraging analysis, but the idea at the center of it is that there's a transition towards group chats, sure, but there is such a thing. Like, it is true that this is happening. Let me just say that. It is true. When we talk about in geopolitics, neorealism, or we talk about Mackinder's theory of the world island, it's not even whether or not it's true, it's whether or not people that matter think it's true. It's whether the people who are in a position of power are behaving as if it's true, because then that will manifest in real life. So,
do you have the will to believe it?
Yeah, and so do enough people believe in the anti-meme to make it real? And this is something we deal with. I know for a fact that there's groups out there, group chats, and also political groups who adopted this and believe this to be true, that we got to take our ideas but cover it in spikes and chains and weird shit and taboos to keep the wrong people out. But that's why my take here was I think from an organistic point of view that kills the meme long term. I don't think it can evolve. I think if you put it in an ugly cage, it can mutate. But like we said, the meme wants to. I don't think an anti-meme leads to a meme. Does that make any sense? That's not gone to the book. I would love to hear more. Let's enter into the Richard Dawkins view of this, which is, let's talk about like it's an animal. How does an anti-meme really lead to a super meme? She kind of talked about it with truth tellers and champions, but that's very vague. It's all incredibly vague. And there's actually no firm example she gives of that. Not really. You're supposed to autocomplete that yourself, but it's left up to the reader to imagine, like, how an anti-meme, does it stay an anti-meme forever? Or is the goal to eventually become a super meme? And is it qualitative at all? At any point, there's truth tellers. Yes, there's advocates for the meme, but anyone can call himself a truth teller. I know people who see themselves as truth tellers and they're grifters. They're telling lies. So, like I started off with, can anyone just do this about anything? And the truth is not present here. And I think that's what's missing in this, this thesis statement here, because again, she's not from this space, presumably. So we're always trying to get to the truth. We're about first principles. We're about, like, we believe that. There's that great Curtis Yarvin quote. I don't know if we want to traffic in too many Curtis Yarvin quotes, but he's got a few of them, and I don't even know if this is true, but it sounds good, where he says the right is just the absence of the left. Absent all the oppression and all the censoring and all the debanking, our ideas would propagate more. I think that's important to keep in mind, that I don't want to appeal to our oppressors and our enemies by imprisoning ourselves and acting like that imprisonment is a superior strategy. Even to quote Curtis Yarvin again, he would say that's a prey position, but you must adopt a prey position to survive within the system, within the cathedral. And I'm not even sure I accept that. And I think you can get so lost in believing that you adopt a prey position when you don't always need to. And then you think the prey position is the only smart way to be. And there's certain people I've seen that are advocating for that even still.
That becomes the real thing that this book leaves me lacking on, and I mentioned at the beginning, is that it doesn't acknowledge anything about the powers that be. And it treats this more like a cute sociological anthropology study. And it's just like, if you're a political actor, even if it's just you posting or facilitating a community, like I have said from the very beginning, that if the things that I do make it possible for my grandchildren to sit under the vine and fig tree in which I have planted and will not be afraid, then my life entirely has been worth it. And all that I do and all that I believe in. That's a pretty straightforward explanation, right? And sometimes it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to maybe get lost in the weeds or to get lost in the game. I'm in it for the love of the game, baby. And it's just like, there is a really great degree of seriousness to this, even for major mainstream voices. I mean, I know Michael J. Knowles, who works for the Daily Wire of all places, has been publicly fighting with Stripe, and there's no real transparency over that. You and I know countless people that have been doxxed, debanked, depersoned, have had hit pieces written about them in Hope Not Hate or the SPLC or the ADL or whatever, right? Or whatever the Canadian equivalent is. And it's just that sometimes we forget that the things that we do can bring the eye of Sauron or can bring the eye of our enemies onto us. And then it gets lost in the weeds because because sometimes, maybe we also take a predator position and then we bite off way more than we can chew, or we think that the enemy's weak, or it won't happen to us. It'll happen to some other guy. And then we get screwed. Right. And so for me, when I read the book initially, I thought, damn, I feel kind of irked because I feel like I could have written this book already, or I could have wrote it. And now I feel very incensed to write a sequel or a response or a better version of it. And I know that sounds very prideful because I've never published a book in my life, but I want to give it a shot, and maybe I will. But this book leaves me tickled in the sense that like there's some things in here that are true, but I feel like it misses the forest for the trees.
We should get her on the show, and we should workshop a sequel.
I would love to.
There's a great question here, and we'll end on this, I promise.
Okay.
Sex Frequent said, I was hoping she'd approach it more from the perspective of accidental anti-memes, like why some things do not take off despite circumstances, what makes something so gay you can't push it. Now, there's one example. I feel like I want to give more examples because it helps get people.
You can't push it.
Let me give you an example of a purposeful anti-meme that I think it wasn't referenced at all in this book, but I think you'll understand where I'm getting at with this. I think a purposeful anti-meme is the writings of Nick Land. I think he goes out of his way, especially with the Meltdown essay, to explain things in a way that's pretty dense and obtuse, and that for the wrong
if
type
you don't get the 20 different things he's referencing, good fucking luck.
Yeah, and also it's not obvious to how to even read it. Is this literal? Is it figurative? What's he even talking about? So for a lot of people, they see that, and even Sean Weiland referenced Westworld in this. I only saw season 1, but the androids, when you want to code in something, they're not allowed to look at it. It says, looks like nothing to me. Like they literally can't see it. And so for a lot of people,
She references that in the book.
Like it takes a lot of concentration to really unpack Nick Land. So just whether or not you like him or dislike him, I think he's an example, and I think he knows what he's doing when he writes that. But what would an accidental anti-meme be? Something that maybe wants to be taken seriously but can't because it's so gay. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. COVID? Now? You know what I mean?
Now maybe.
But like, despite all their best efforts, there was no admission of fault or wrongdoing or failure. It's just, it became so cartoon. Like, because if you remember back during COVID, it's the dancing nurses. It's cold. Every piece of state propaganda about COVID was just so cringe and annoying, and everyone who was on side of it, it's almost like even if it wasn't if you do nothing about the alleged virus at all, you would just say, this looks really gay. I want nothing to do with this. But it had the institutional backing of the entire civilization and the entire fucking Western world. And yet here it is. It's embarrassing. If you're wearing a mask in public, people are going to come and kick you in the nuts, right? Like you are a pariah now if you wear a mask.
I
in
mean,
public.
that's a good example because how do a lot of libs treat it? Oh, you stayed indoors for 2 weeks. It wasn't anything serious.
Yeah, they can't even admit to it.
And that's a thought terminating cliche right there. And that's your anti-meme. Because I'll tell you, I'm sorry, I'm riled up again. I got it. And because of my fucking kidney transplant, I managed to get monoclonal antibody treatment. And I tell you what, right fucking now, bucko, if I didn't have that fucking transplant, I would have been put on a racial triage list and I would have been on the back of the line because my ass is lily white and happy with it. But because that existed in Dallas County, Texas, God knows how many white people were pushed to the side to say, nope, I only got it because I had a pre-existing health condition that left me immunosuppressed for the rest of my fucking life. But that's what they want to tell me to forget. Oh, you were locked up for 2 weeks. Fuck you. Fuck you. No. And here's the other thing, too, and I'll end it on this.
This is one of my favorite episodes, by the way.
Screenshot of a tweet. Guys, Alexander Brahman, not white guy, not Indian. He says, a Pakistani neighbor is 4 times more likely to sexually assault your daughter than a white neighbor. Now that we have the data, that's not racist to say it's a true fact. Some person responds to the tweet. Clearly not an English person. When data, in quotation marks, scare quotes, is used to spread hate, it stops being a truth and becomes a weapon. Racism, just as statistics, is still racism. There's your meme. There's your anti-meme.
I agree completely. And what are we at now? Just over 2.5 hours. I mean, I feel like we could have made
Nadia,
this a 2-parter.
let's talk. Let's write a sequel.
Nadia, baby, come over. Get over here. Nadia, get the fuck over here.
We got ideas. You want to be a star? You want a bestseller, don't you?
You want to be famous, Nadia? Come on, do you even read?
You're more famous than us, Nadia. It's okay.
I maintain that I blame the Dark Forest Collective more than anything.
I blame the Dark Elves.
Unfortunately, Nadia is going to become the receptacle for a lot of the... Because when you talk about this sort of thing, it's very relevant right now. Everyone's experienced this. Everyone kind of knows what she's talking about. So you're going to become subject to all the anecdotal hatred people have for encountering these types of people. Or maybe they believe this happens and feel that it shouldn't. But I honestly think you could take this, treat this like a first draft. I can see a 500-page book built on this if you want to get deep with every idea that she kind of touches on. In fact, maybe even get rid of Rene Girard, period. He was included in this. I don't think it really fits. I don't think you want to get into the memetic crisis. There's going to be a lot of landmines in there. You're not... Because, we were talking about this before the show. I like Rene Girard, and I kind of like the idea of a memetic crisis, but... I don't think I even accept it as truth. I think it's too narrow. It doesn't explain that maybe there are people in this society that deserve to be scapegoated. Just like this, in this, like, there's nothing qualitative about it. It's just I'm discussing forces at work, but no, there's got to be.
I'm just gonna hate this guy.
Maybe some ideas are better than others. Do we have any mechanisms? How do we know when an idea is unfairly maligned? You know what I mean? Like maybe some ideas, like there's some ideas that are persecuted by the state that deserve to be persecuted by the state. It's not like, and you can get so wrapped up in your ideology that you're like, no, I'm for whatever the state's against. And then you're in like a whole age of consent thing. Then you're in, like legal rape. Like what, there's all kinds.
You're a libertarian again.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to look, if you do that, you're going to end up a libertarian. You don't want to be an egalitarian, do you?
And I might write something about memes now, because I think if there is a powerful super meme that is damaging a real info hazard, it's egalitarianism.
Yeah, we could probably we'll probably discuss this at length. I think we've given enough for people to take this, just like us, as much as you might disagree with some of it. There's something in here. Just like when I talk about even Nick,
I would recommend reading it. I will say that I will, as much shit as we've said, and as much as we've bitched, and as much as we've gone back and forth, getting angry and yelling and roller coasters of emotions, I still recommend you read the book.
It's the classic "Do you even read?" book, where even with Anti-Oedipus, even with Spinal Catastrophism, maybe less with a Cyclonopedia, but as much as I might disagree rationally, spiritually with some of these ideas, I'm like, there's something there. There's something has a hold over me, and I'm not going to just toss it away and dismiss it, because there's some books, some ideas you can just dismiss. They're shitty, but like, I don't know. I get the sense that if you watch this episode, take this, you're going to start talking to your friends about it, and you're going to start looking for it, and even if it's not 100% there, I think you, the listener, the viewer, can build on this, and maybe that's enough. All right, so we gotta get going.
Yeah,
we must.
This
has been a great episode. This is one of my favorites, and I don't mind telling you. All right, so
next time it's gonna be a lot more dry.
Oh yeah, next time we really should stop reading books that we like.
I feel bad because we were originally supposed to do Kolosek next, and then this came in the mail for me, and I read it in one sitting, and I was like, "Dimes, baby, we gotta do a book."
I know you were showing me the photo of him, like, damn, that looks good. I gotta get my hands on that. And you said, no, we gotta do it now. I'm like, yeah, of course.
I was like, Sharon, we gotta go and fucking tour. And here we are, and we went on tour. Also, I'm doing this. I needed to get a one episode. Do you even read out before my fiance moves in over here to my neck of the woods? So I figured, okay, we'll do an easy book, and then I have some time to do some reading before my life fucking changes. So
this is exciting.
Thank you, Dimes.
By the way, what's your wife think about all this? About your career?
I will end the episode on a funny story, and I'll leave it at this. My wife to be finds this stuff weird, in the sense that she's not a political woman. Although sometimes she texts me strange takes that makes me have a lot of hope for her. She had some funny things to say about Netanyahu last week that just made me smile. And then, because it's been long distance for quite some time now, but one time she had the Digital Archipelago on at work, and she works nights. And a guy walked up to her, and she was just like, "You're a fan of the Prudentialist?" And she goes, "Yeah, I've been a fan since the beginning." And he goes, "Wow, I didn't know that he had that many like female listeners." And
that's so cool.
And she's just like, "Yeah, I guess I'm one of the few." And then she proceeded to text me later that night. "Oh, so some guy's a fan of yours here where I'm working at. And oh, by the way, tell your co-host that he needs to get laid."
even passive observers.
Just passive observers. My future wife is just like, "Hey, tell Gio to get laid," and I'm like, "I can do that, honey, whenever you want."
I mean, we've been trying.
Well, he's finally succeeded. So
we've been pushing that geo-shaped boulder up a hill for quite some time.
One
now.
must imagine Sisyphus coming. We'll see you all next time.
Just one story for my wife, because there's a couple instances where I was doing an interview during the day and we share an office.
Yeah.
And then she was sitting behind me. She got her headphones on, but she can hear the one-sided conversation. She hears what I'm saying, and a few times she laughed. And she's not into all this, right? But she laughed. And I thought, damn, I'm good at this. If you can get a girl into this, you actually do feel like you've succeeded at something. I can get any sociopath to listen to me. That's my meat and potatoes. But if I can get like a woman with a job to listen, and I think we got a good thing going with the show. Anyway, okay, I gotta let you go. Let's get going. Thank you everyone for watching. I had a fantastic time, and we'll see you next time.